Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let Ashley get started. So she's going to tell you a little bit about what it takes to be a nurse, and she actually just recently completed her exam and is now officially a registered nurse. So she has a lot of great tips for all of you that are interested in this field, especially since she's done it so recently. So I'll let her take over and just let you hear from her, and then after she's done speaking. Well, we're happy to take any questions that all of you have for her. And so we'll do questions in a limit of one per student, and you can raise your hands on Zoom, and I will call on you in the order that you raise your hands. But I'll let Ashley get started.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So my name is Ashley. I have recently graduated from McMaster Nursing in their accelerated stream. I have a little bit of a undirect way to nursing. So I started my education in biochemistry. So I have an undergrad in biochem. And then I actually did some research in that role. I enjoyed it a lot. And at the end of my undergrad, I kind of transitioned to a program, accelerated nursing, and at McMaster. And so I kind of wanted to gear a little bit towards more patient-facing roles. So I've recently graduated that program, and I actually recently wrote my NCLEX, so very fresh from that. Uh, that's kind of a little bit about my background. I think this session will be more informal Q&A, and so I'll be able to answer any questions that you have on nursing in general and perhaps what that looks like program-wise, but also any questions perhaps with like the transition to the accelerated stream, etc. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to answer them.
Yeah, awesome. So before we take some questions, Ashley, do you want to tell people maybe some of the courses you took in undergrad and what the
Yeah.
application process was like to the accelerated
Mhm.
nursing program? Because I don't think a lot of people probably know that there's an accelerated nursing
Yeah.
option. So maybe you could tell people a little bit
Mhm.
about that.
So a lot of programs will have a 4-year basic stream, and then they'll have an accelerated stream, which is 2 years, going through the summer, in like the first set of summer. So five semesters I did, and so in my undergrad, I took a lot of biochem science courses. Um, Biology, kind of the whole bit. And so a couple of the courses that I took were prerequisites for accelerated nursing. So it's almost like you're entering after that first year of the basic stream. So I had previously done my anatomy and physiology. I had lots of biochem courses, stats. uh, and psychology were other courses I took that were considered prerequisites for the accelerated nursing program. So when I applied, I had to, show that I did these courses and these credits in my previous undergrad. And based off of those and kind of my standing as a student was put towards going into the accelerated stream. And so I actually started it in 2024, the fall, and then I went through and I just finished this spring for the accelerated stream. And essentially, it's the same. It's just you have a little bit longer hours for your clinical rotations, and you're kind of starting at a different point in the program because we had those previous credits that kind of account towards this degree.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll open up the chat and also just like if people want to raise hands too. So does anyone have any questions for Ashley about how she got into nursing, what it's like, any tips and advice that she can give you, anything like that? I see a couple of hands raised already, so I'll go with Fahimi. Okay, I think maybe they're having a bit of trouble unmuting, so I'll go to Alexis next.
Um, since the accelerated program is more vigorous, how did you get through burnout? Like if you had burnout?
Honestly, my first semester was pretty rough. I think it was just kind of it was like a lot of information all at once. And I guess undergrad kind of prepared me for that. Um, I think as the program progressed, what was hard was having clinical hours and, having your 12-hour shifts and then coming home and having all of this schoolwork to do. I think it's just good to kind of balance out your time in terms of, you know, having things that aren't school to kind of balance it all out. So I think that helped a little bit, but it was definitely a challenge at times. But yeah, it is pretty fast paced, but it's worth it in the end.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with an
Yeah.
accelerated program as well, people probably are curious about how, burnout works, especially since, being a nurse and doing clinicals and things like that are very fast paced. So thank you very much for sharing that. And then up next, I have Jaden with a question.
What's it like being a nurse? Like, what's the job like?
So I have a job lined up in August. So technically I'm not practicing as an RN yet. But based off of my clinical experience, I also had a role as a clinical extern as well, so I can kind of speak to that as well. It's very patient facing, and that's something that I didn't realize was so important to me. And so you really have an opportunity to build relationships with the people you're caring for, especially when you have continuity of care and you're caring for the same individuals, perhaps for multiple shifts. I think that is one thing that stands out to me in nursing, and what that's like is being able to build those relationships and have patient-centered care and learn about them, not just what's on their chart, but have the time and energy to be able to uh, know about them as a person and get to know them as a person and what would best support their care.
Awesome. Thank you. Up next, I have Elizabeth.
I was wondering on what you chose, why you chose to be a nurse.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this one is kind of a little bit of a longer story, but as I previously mentioned, I did my undergrad at McMaster in biochemistry. So I started off in a general science stream in life sci, and then I specialized into biochem in my second year. I wouldn't change anything. I enjoyed that degree very much, and I think I learned a lot in the classes I took and the experiences I had within my undergrad. In my fourth year, I actually did some research in a atherosclerosis lab. And so I did, without getting into that too much, I did some research and I enjoyed that a lot. It was about half my course load in my fourth year. And as much as I really enjoyed the research side of things, and I don't necessarily would discount doing some of that in the future, uh, I really craved to be closer to the patients that we were trying to help. Obviously, research is incredibly important, and that is what informs our evidence-based care as nurses and as different practitioners in the healthcare field. But I just wanted to be a little bit closer to the people. And so that patient focus and that direct interaction is what kind of led me to nursing. I actually did I had a volunteer position with something called the HELP program. It's a hospital elder life program. And so I was actually able to get in the hospital with that volunteer role and have interactions with patients, but also with the nurses on the floors. And that was a really good indication of what it was like being, a nurse on a unit, on a medical and surgical unit, and what that kind of entailed. So that is kind of what led me to nursing. I also had a lot of family that were currently going through the nursing program, and learning from them firsthand was like, I think this is something that I could see myself in and something that I could envision myself pursuing. And here I am.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, we have another question from Dongha.
Hello, Ashley. I was wondering, based on your clinical experiences, how did you communicate with patients or families when they're anxious or overwhelmed, in like high stress situations?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think the most important thing when, dealing with anybody who's going through perhaps a very traumatic time, or, they're feeling a lot of things all at once is to try to put them yourself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from. It may be difficult at times because you and I may not have the exact experiences that they're going through in that moment. But I think acknowledging that um, everything that they're feeling in this moment is entirely valid and it's a lot for anyone to kind of process. Understanding kind of what their thought process is and, perhaps why they are feeling anxious, what's contributing more to that, can be very beneficial. But listening and just kind of asking those open-ended questions can be very valuable and kind of understanding what is contributing to that anxiety and that stress. So, you don't assume anything, but allowing them the opportunity to kind of open up and talk about what is contributing to those feelings other than perhaps their diagnosis and uh, whatnot.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. Our next question is going to come from Alexander.
I would just like to wonder whether it was like when you started like at McMaster University, wonder was it your original goal to like to enter the nursing field, or were maybe thinking about doing some other subjects? Because I think you also did like subjects like biochemistry, anatomy, biology, psychology. So I wondered if you were maybe originally thinking of going maybe somewhere else, or was like your original goal from the beginning to go into nursing?
My original goal was definitely not to go into nursing. That is not something I had kind of planned out. I think if that was the case, I would have entered the basic stream nursing. For me, I was interested in science, potentially like in the medical field somewhere. At one point, I was really interested in PA school, so physician assistant school. Um, and my thought process was to try to kind of gain as much experience as I can to try to inform, what I want to do in the future. And so that's kind of why I pursued a fourth year thesis and I did some research. And although I really enjoyed it, I was able to kind of see that that didn't really align as much with my interests as perhaps nursing would.
Right. Thank you.
No problem.
Great question so far, everyone. Next question is going to come from Anome.
Right. So I wanted to know, like, when you were doing your clinicals, like, did they have like different different professionals in like nursing that like you get to see like how a day in the life was? Like, did you wanted to like go into different kind of nursing instead of just like being a like regular nurse?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the area that you're in. And so as a student, I was able to get a variety of clinical experiences. So in the accelerated stream, since we had 5 semesters, I had 5 different clinical placements, plus one additional one in the summer semester. So I had 6 different ones. And they kind of try to check off different boxes. So I had some medical surgical placements. I also had a mother baby placement, so I was able to do some shadowing and L&D as well as postpartum, so after. Um, and those were, very unique experiences that I got to have. Some individuals in my program would also have forensic or mental health placements, and so they would be a very other niche area of nursing. And some would also be in peds, so a lot of individuals would have placements at Mac Kids. And those are kind of the atypical ones we got to choose from. And then in my final year, so my consolidation, I was able to have a little bit more selection in terms of the types of placements that people have. And so I had a NRT is what we call it, nursing resource team. So that was my pre-consolidation placement, and so I actually got to go around to different places in the hospital. So I had a lot of medical, surgical, ICU, ER, um, cardiology, stuff like that, and a large variety in that role. And in my final placement, my consolidation was in the CVICU at the General in Hamilton, and so I was able to care for patients post cardiac surgery, which was very cool. I think the day to day really depends on where you are. So medical surgical units, you have anywhere from 4 to 5, potentially 6 patients, depending on ratios. Um, and you may be caring for them after surgery. You may be caring for medicine patients that are there long term with chronic illnesses. When I was in the CVICU, I was caring for very acute patients post cardiac surgery. So that was a very, very different patient population than perhaps on the medical surgical floors. They are coming to us intubated and sedated, that sort of thing. So I think I don't know if that answers your question very much, but it really depends your day to day on where you are. And I think that is an exciting part of nursing is that your day can look very different depending on the role that you're in. And so there's so much variety, and that's just bedside. There's a lot of bedside roles that nurses will step into.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. Our next question is from Hayun.
Yeah, so really, really nice to meet you. I was just wondering, like, in your experience, are there specific areas, whether in exam styles or like clinical skills or mindset, whatnot, where chemistry majors typically struggle when adapting to nursing? Because like I'm also interested in like the basic sciences, but also medicine. So yeah.
I think it all kind of comes down to the person and perhaps their previous experiences, but I do see where you're coming from. I think that yeah, different roles. So like I do have a lot of experience in like the basic sciences. That's kind of what my previous degree was. And I think the studying style and the skills that I built, in those courses and preparing for those classes as part of that degree, contributed to, me being able to successfully complete my BSCM. And I think having like that kind of foundation is transferable in some aspects. Obviously, the patient side of thing and that kind of like communication and patient-centered care and therapeutic communication was something that I had, no experience within my previous degree. So that was something that perhaps I had to kind of build upon entering nursing. I do think that different volunteer roles kind of helped support that were external to my education at the time. Um, does that kind of answer your question or?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Our next question is from Anna Maria.
Hello, it's nice to meet you. I actually want to go into nursing myself, and I actually have a couple of questions written
Of
down.
course.
Um, do most schools have accelerated programs or specific ones?
I think it's specific ones. So I actually only applied to McMaster, but I know that Western has, I think, an accelerated program. Please do
Mhm.
not quote me. Um, and I'm not sure where else. Maybe Queens, but I honestly don't know. I'm mostly familiar with Hamilton and McMaster,
Mhm.
but it is something that programs are adapting to. So to kind of get more healthcare providers out there, get more nurses out there. Um, so yeah. Do you have any
All
other
right.
questions with accelerated
Yeah.
nursing?
Um, let's say you get into accelerated nursing and you realize that it's like too much for you. Is there a way kind of to back out into like the normal nursing like route?
I'm not sure, but I would imagine that that would be a possibility. I think that's something you would have to talk to like academic counseling about. Um,
Mhm.
but like I do think there's a lot of options. I don't think they're gonna be like, oh no, you can't continue in this stream. But honestly, like it is a lot at times, but it is manageable. Like I have a lot of, peers, we go through our waves where perhaps it's a little bit more difficult in, these couple weeks of the semester, but it is manageable for
All
sure.
right. Can you also explain how clinical rotations work?
Yeah. So this is dependent a lot on the school. So again, this might vary depending on what nursing school you're looking at. But for Mac Accelerated and for the basic stream as well, you would rank different placements, and then essentially you get what you get. And the placement runs for each semester. So it's a little bit different hour-wise for um, basic stream because they technically have one more semester in there where they're able to kind of balance out their hours, but the amount of hours that they get accelerated people also have to meet is like a standard. So we still got the same amount of hours, but each semester prior we would rank our placements and then we would find out, a couple weeks maybe before the semester starts. And then that would run for the duration of the semester, so usually 12 weeks. For me, all of mine were for 12 hours. So I would have one placement 1 day a week for 12 hours. I think that was my second semester of nursing school. And then I did the same thing in the summer, except we basically did twice as many hours in the summer. So I would have two different placements that were like shorter durations, but I would have 2 days a week where I would be in that placement. So it would be two 12s in a week, and then that would repeat for 6 weeks, and then I would switch to a different placement, and then I would have it 2 days a week for 12 hours each, and that would run the duration of the rest of the summer. So that was structured a little bit differently. That's unique to the accelerated stream. Where it really differs for both basic and accelerated is the final year. So your consolidation, you're mainly doing clinical hours versus any sort of classes. I think my second to last semester, I had two classes and then mostly clinical hours. And in my final semester, I only had one class and my clinical hours. And so that in that particular one, we would not shadow, our hours would reflect that of our preceptor. So I would basically be working, almost full-time hours in that time period to meet my hour requirements. So whatever my preceptor was working, I was essentially working for my clinical hours. So it would vary a lot in that role. We'd have days, nights, weekdays, weekends, holidays.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So our next question is going to come from Yusa.
Hi, I want to ask, how is your routine and schedule like that helped you like excel towards going into nursing?
Like prior to nursing or when I was in the
Prior to nursing.
program?
I
Like
think
during
prior to
nursing?
Oh,
Pro
sorry. So like
Sorry.
I guess like I would say like maybe perhaps in high school, be
Yeah.
going into like the program that
High
was
school was a long time ago.
oh
But
okay. Okay,
but
maybe I'd ask
like
like yeah.
I did all like my sciences in high school. Um I worked throughout high school. I worked a lot in the summers, which kind of helped down the road paying with education. Uh I had some extracurriculars in high school too. Um, it was busy, but it kind of sets you up for school and university, which I would attest was a little bit more busier than high school. But
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so our next question is going to come from Kevin, and we'll do about 15 or 20 minutes more of this moderated Q&A. But Ashley, are you comfortable sharing like an email address or a contact and
yeah, I
email
can
for
do
people
that.
to reach out to you after? Awesome. Okay, great.
I can send that to you afterwards.
That would be great. Awesome. Okay, so Kevin, I'm not hearing anything. Are you hearing anything, Ashley?
No, I don't hear anything.
Okay.
Maybe if you type it in the chat.
Yeah, Kevin, do you want to type your question in the chat for Ashley? Okay, awesome. While Kevin types his question, we'll move on to Elise or Elise.
Hi, Ashley. I was just wondering what class or skill in school did you learn that helped you most in your career?
Mhm. Probably like the clinical skills because that's what we really need. Um, so we have labs in school where we kind of go in and it almost looks like a clinic sort of environment. We have, patient rooms and whatnot. And I think that those skills really helped kind of transfer us because that kind of taught us the basics, everything from our like our vitals to our different types of assessments and our focus assessments in general head to toes. It's something that we use every day. So I think that would be the most prominent for me. The other one would just be like the communication skills because that is something that, isn't necessarily easily taught. It's you have to really work at it and learn. And so I think that's another thing that is important that we kind of built upon in school, but more prominently we built on in clinical placements.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So, Kevin's question was, do you plan to work in a nursing group or by yourself?
So my for work, I haven't started this position, but I do have a position lined up. Start date in August. And I'll actually be starting in an NGG program, which is a new graduate guarantee. It's an initiative from the government. Basically, I have a little bit more protected preceptor time in that role, which is really exciting. And so I'm actually starting at a Dravinsky Hospital in the ICU. So I am starting in critical care. There'll be lots to learn, but it's a floor I'm familiar with. I did a clinical extern on that floor, and so I actually worked there as an extern for uh, several months before graduating nursing school.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is going to come from Young Jun.
Hello, good morning. So, what skills would you prioritize developing now that aren't taught in school?
hmm I think there's a lot of skills that go into it, but I think the main one is being able to talk to patients and um, navigate potentially, um, uncomfortable situations, but being able to communicate with fellow nurses and fellow healthcare providers, but most importantly, the patients, and being able to um, have that therapeutic communication and open communication with them is very, very important, and it's something that needs to very, very important to this particular role as a nurse.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Neha?
Hi, it's nice to meet you. Um, so I did want to ask, as someone who is currently debating whether she should go into medicine or psychology, and even nursing was an option for me too. Um, was there, I think you mentioned that you really like the patient interaction and the fact that you got to build a relationship with them. But was there any like one moment where you really, like, if you're comfortable sharing it, of course, where you really were sure, like it happened and you were like, yes, nursing is the best fit for me?
Yeah, I think this is something that I kind of struggled with at first because I was like, I was doing all these courses for nursing, but I wasn't having the patient-centered, like, the patient care or the clinical experience. Yeah, that came in my second semester. And I think in one of my placements, maybe not an exact time, but in my first clinical placement, I was interacting with patients, I was doing their care, I was forming relationships with them. I had a patient who had really opened up to me and told me things that, were a huge part of who they were as a person, but something that they were perhaps, hesitant to share. And the fact that they had opened up in that way, um, you know, really gave me that validation that, I can do a lot of good in this role. And I think that, that type of care is where I personally would get validation from the role. And I think that it was kind of where I was like, yes, I think I'm in the right spot, which was something that I hadn't felt in anything else I had done prior to nursing. And so just kind of those connections that you make with your patients, that is why I'm doing what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. Thank you. Up next is Eva.
Hi, is there, mm, let me think. Sorry, I wasn't, I wasn't ready. So how did you avoid being waitlisted getting into the nursing program?
Honestly, I applied to a lot of different things, like a lot of different things. And so it kind of just worked out that way. And I know that that's not the case for everybody, and it can be very complicated for individuals. Um, getting in and that process. I think maybe it was different because I was previously a student with McMaster. I'm not really sure what kind of contributed to that, but I think, just putting yourself forward and I'm not really sure actually. Um, I mean, you just gotta, do your best and be okay with that too. Um, it was a little bit of a different application process for me. There wasn't any sort of uh, like interview for accelerated nursing, so I couldn't really like speak on that part. It was honestly mostly academics, unfortunately. So I'm not sure how different programs do it though. So it may be different between different nursing programs, and that could be a way that you can kind of stand out in terms of application.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Ashley. We'll take a few more questions. So up next is Ji Young.
Hi, actually. Could you recommend some good subjects to study or like books to read before entering nursing school?
I know that there's a lot of good bibliographies or books that are written by nurses and can kind of speak to that role. Honestly, I didn't have a lot of prep in that case prior to nursing. Um, there's a lot of best practice guidelines and stuff from the CNO, so that may be some light reading for you. But I don't think I have a particular book that I could recommend that is applicable to nursing at this time.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then the next question is from Marika.
Hello, Ashley. I just had a question. So I'm interested in PA or like nurse practitioner. I know you had mentioned it before.
Mhm.
So what do you think about like doing undergrad as nursing and then possibly going either path to PA or NP?
So I can speak to NP. Um, Basically, I think it differs depending on program, but usually they require you to practice a couple years as a nurse. I feel like it's two, before you can apply to the PA program or sorry, the NP program, and that would be a master's degree after your nursing undergrad. For PA, I know there's a lot more no more programs coming up, which was really exciting for that. And that can be a lot of them are undergrads actually, but they require a lot of previous experience, potentially clinical experience. So if you were in like a nursing role as a student, you would get that clinical hour experience that would be kind of needed for a lot of the PA programs that are in Ontario right now. So that could be a good way to kind of go into either. But if you were thinking NP, you'd be practicing as a nurse for a little while before you would likely be able to even apply to a NP role.
Okay, thank you so much. That answered my question.
No problem.
Awesome. And then the next question is from Sanam.
Since like medicine like requires like a lot of quick thinking and like memorization, do you like have any like personal strategies that like helped you retain the information?
It depends on the person's learning style for sure. What worked for me is I did a lot of cue cards, but I also had this giant whiteboard in my student house. So I would write things out, and that kind of helped me, doing like the brain dumps and that sort of thing, and figuring out how different concepts are connected to each other, helped a lot.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is from An.
Hey Ashley, I was just wondering, what would you say the mo like strongest part of your application to your nursing program was?
So I previously mentioned there wasn't a lot of different parts to it. If I remember correctly, I had to submit transcripts, and I don't even know if there was anything for extracurriculars. Like it was very academic based, and that unfortunately doesn't allow a lot of room for, telling yourself as a person and conveying, why I think I would be a good nurse. that was specific to McMaster. It may be different in other areas. But I can't really touch on those. I don't have a lot of knowledge on other programs.
I'm sorry, just like a follow-up. So like you didn't have
Yeah.
to like say anything about like clinical hours or nursing, I mean, or like research or anything from like your undergrad.
No, not that I remember
Thank
at least. I believe it was is basically grades essentially, and like my previous GPA and the fact that I had the prerequisites. That was a big part too. So perhaps if I didn't do as well in those prereqs, then that may have swayed it a little bit more. The other thing was Casper. I did forget about Casper. So a lot of the medical areas, so nursing, um, medicine would do it as well if you were applying to med school, the Casper test. So that was another big part. I did forget about that. So that kind of allows you to show kind of more your people-based skills. Um, so that would be another component. Transcripts and Casper scores.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. We're gonna take, I think, three more questions. So we'll go to Adriana.
Hi, Ashley. I was wondering if on your path to become a nurse, you have to go to med school first and then nursing school, or you can just go to nursing school first.
Yep, you just go straight to nursing school. Um, what I did was a little bit different, doing like a previous education and then doing the 2-year accelerated stream. But there's many different ways to become a nurse, and you can do that right out of high school.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, Natalia. Oh, okay. I
Hi,
think, oh, okay, there we go.
sorry. What was the biggest challenge in your journey to becoming a nurse?
Hmm, That's a good question. I think the biggest challenge was, I mean, in school, I think it was balancing the fact that I was doing courses and having long hours. Like in my pre-consolidation, my consolidation, I would have, frequently have day shifts and night shifts, and then would have classes following that. There's rules around, when you can work versus when classes are, but I think it was challenging doing these things, potentially more tired than I would have, been doing my courses in undergrad where I had, more protected sleep. I think that was a challenge for me, but that also could just be me.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. Okay, we'll do a question from Liliana.
Good morning, Ashley. Thank you for taking your time. I was wondering, if I'm not mistaken, I know that the nursing school has a very like hard exit exam. I've heard like it's notorious for being difficult. So I was wondering what your experience was and how it was like.
Yeah, for sure. So the NCLEX RN is the exam that we are required to do after nursing school. So I graduated in the spring, and so then I was, a nurse, but I wasn't registered. So I had to go through a process of applying to the CNO, which is our governing body, that's mostly to protect the patients. But that is where I had applied through, paid my registration fees, paid my fees for the actual exam. I have recently completed that exam successfully. So I would go to a testing center and I would write that your NCLEX RN, the new gen. It's interesting because it's a computer-based test and it will change based off of the answers that you provide. So if you get something wrong, it might give you another question in that area. And basically, you can have anywhere from 85 questions minimum up into 150 is the max. You have a set time, 5 hours to complete this exam, which honestly is more than enough time to do it. But it's unlike previous tests I've done for sure, but um, there's a lot of great programs that you can essentially purchase. So things like UWorld and Archer are different programs that are really good. They give you a bank of questions and you just do the questions, and that prepared me very well for the exam.
Okay, awesome. So I think that's all the time we have for questions today, but I'm gonna send a poll out to everyone. And so I want to know if there's any interest in maybe doing another nursing Q&A evening bonus session for those of you that didn't get to ask questions today. But first, I just would like everyone to do a little virtual round of applause for Ashley for coming in to speak to us today, especially on such short notice. So thank you very much, Ashley, for coming in and taking the time to answer so many really awesome questions from some of our participants that want to learn a little bit more about nursing. And then Ashley will let me know what the best contact method is afterwards. So
Mhm.
you're welcome to reach out to Ashley. Just remember, make sure you're being respectful. Don't spam Ashley or anything. Remember, she's still working. But we'll share that email and contact information with all of you afterwards. And you're welcome to reach out to her and, ask her any questions that maybe you didn't get to ask her today. Just make sure you introduce yourself as a program participant so she knows who you are. But thank you so much again, Ashley, for coming and
No
speaking
problem.
to all of
Thanks for
us
having
today.
me.
It was so helpful.
Okay, take care. Best of luck, everyone.
Bye. Okay, awesome. We'll take a short little break now while everyone fills out the poll. So if we end up doing a bonus session as a Q&A, just for those of you that weren't able to ask your questions today, it would be totally optional. So there's no pressure at all to attend, but I know there's been a lot of interest in nursing this year, so we're working on organizing some optional evening sessions for those of you that are interested in, actually chatting with people in the nursing field. But actually, for right now, we're going to transition into our second out of our total three speakers for today. And so I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Sarah and Catherine. So Sarah and Catherine are both incoming medical students at the Toronto Metropolitan University School of Medicine. Sarah and Catherine, do you mind just giving me a little wave? Just so I can figure out where you are on Zoom. There's a lot of people joining us here today, and they're all very excited to hear from all of you. But yeah, let me just go ahead and throw a spotlight on them.
Sure, if you can see me.
I can't see you right now, but that could also just be my connection. Oh, yes, I
Okay.
can see you now.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
Perfect. So I'll add a spotlight on you and then add a spotlight on Catherine as well. Beautiful. Awesome. Okay, so let me do a brief little intro for Sarah and Catherine. So, Sarah is an incoming medical student, like I mentioned, at the Toronto Metropolitan University. She graduated from McMaster University, which is actually also my alma mater, with an honors bachelor's in life sciences. And she spent a lot of time doing research, teaching, tutoring, volunteering, and getting involved in student clubs. Outside of school, you'll find her keeping up with the World Cup, and she hopes that Portugal will finally bring it home or planning her next adventure, and she's very excited to speak to all of you today. And then we also have Catherine joining us. And so Catherine, again, is also an incoming medical student, and she's currently working at a local hospital administering and registering patients in the emergency department. So she's taken a gap year, but prior to her gap year, she completed a bachelor's in health sciences at Queen's University. And throughout her time there, she pursued clinical research opportunities, and she's a first generation Canadian medical student. And she says that she was once very lost in this process. So she's very excited to be here today. And we really also want you all to take advantage of this opportunity to hear from these two speakers that have very recently been accepted into medical school. So they have really up-to-date tips and advice because they were admitted in this most recent cycle. They both have just a short little presentation for both of you to tell you a little bit more about their background. And then we will go again into a moderated Q&A. When we go into the moderated Q&A, I'd like to prioritize participants that have not had a chance to ask a question yet. So if you asked a question to our first guest speaker, I just ask that you hold off on raising your hand, and then we will prioritize you at the end. I just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. Okay, so Sarah, would you like to go ahead and maybe share your little presentation now?
Yeah, of course. Let me know once you're able to see it.
Yeah.
Are you able to see that?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'll just start off by introducing myself. Thank you so much, Davina, for introducing me. But my name is Sarah, and as she mentioned, I'm starting medical school this year. So I'm just going to go through my journey of how it looked to get into medical school and then answer any questions that you guys have. So we'll start off. I think the best way to start off by letting everyone know is by mentioning your hobbies sometimes. So I love art, I love extracurriculars, and I love Marvel and Bollywood. And recently I've been obsessed with the World Cup. So you'll always find me doing those on the side. And I try my best, even during university or during high school, whenever life got busy, to make sure that I was always taking out time to dedicate to the hobbies that I love a lot. So that's something that I would recommend to every single person. So that's just a little bit about me before we get into my pathway to medical school. So it all started in high school where I went to John Fraser Secondary School in Mississauga. I'm not sure if any of you guys are going there right now. But I did my 4 years there. And when it came to choosing electives, at the time I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I took a lot of science-based electives and a lot of art related, for example, drama. I loved drama. So I took that as well. And then ultimately, after taking all the courses, I decided that I did want to pursue a career in the sciences. And that's when I applied to Queen's Health Sci, I applied to Mac Health Sci, Mac Life Sci, and ultimately I ended up enrolling into McMaster Life Sciences program. I know that is often a very popular choice for people. So if you have any questions, you can ask those in just a little bit. So after that, so I enrolled in McMaster Life Sciences, and then you get what I really liked was after first year, you actually get to specialize. So basically, if you go through first year, you take all the courses, and for example, you really like psychology, you can decide to specialize in psych, and then you have a lot of courses that are based on that program. So I think it gives you a very good opportunity to pursue something that you're interested in after you've taken the first year courses. And so I don't know if are you able to see my mouse?
I can't see your mouse,
Oh,
but if
okay.
you want to point out,
No.
that's totally good.
Okay. So it's just you'll see that there was a wide variety of experiences that I got to have at Mac. And so we got to work in a lab setting a lot, especially during courses like chemistry. And then there were actually really cool labs that simulations that we got to be a part of. And so we would have to like put on different gear and practice different like labs with it, and it was very exciting. And also I just really liked the atmosphere of Mac where like the campus was very compact and in one place, so it was very easy to get around, but also you were able to meet a lot of people. So the first picture that you actually see is from welcome week, and that was where I was meeting this girl for the first time, and she actually ended up becoming my best friend. And then on the very last day of school with the Ferris wheel in the back is us on the last day. So I feel like the Mac community is very, very nice, and you'll end up finding a lot of people that you're able to connect with. And then after graduating, so I kind of knew I wanted to do medical school throughout my undergrad. And so I did apply to, I did write my MCAT in second year summer, third year summer, and fourth year summer. So I did it 3 times, and then I ended up applying every cycle. So after graduating, I actually took a gap year because I didn't get in right after I graduated. And so during that gap year, I did some more research. So I have my research group right there. We actually got to know one another during our fourth year course, during our seminar course, and we all worked really well together. So we were like, let's do some more research together. So we found other professors, we took on projects with him, and then we would work together and kind of do the research project. So that's actually a really good way that you could like even work with people in your class is if you find someone that you work really well with, you can then go ahead and do research with them if that's something you're interested in. So we would always just be on calls doing the research. And then I applied to med school again. Oh, um, oh, there we go. So I just have some generic like recommendations for undergrad courses because I know you guys are applying to undergrad, and this is before we obviously answer any questions. But one of the things that I thought was the best experience I had in my undergrad was taking an experiential learning course. And what that basically means is for that semester, you can go and work in a clinic, or you can go and work at a senior home, or you could work anywhere like that's not at university. That's obviously eligible. And then what happens is you basically do this entire research project throughout that semester in the workplace that you're working at. So I decided to do it at my senior home. So it was Ivan Franco Old Homes. And then I basically looked at the senior residents there and how like their healthcare might be getting affected due to like the activities that they're doing. And so I feel like that's a very cool opportunity to not just get involved in research, but also it exposes you to different environments even in undergrad. So if your university offers that, that's an amazing opportunity. And if you're going to Mac, then one of those courses is Life Sci 3 EP3. So that's something that you could like take note of in case you decide to go with McMaster University. More than that, I know that I enrolled in Life Sci, but I took a lot of courses from other programs. So that's always an opportunity that's open. Well, I know for Mac, I'm not sure. I'm sure Catherine can speak on Queens after, but for Mac, like I took a lot of courses in Health Sci as well. I took a lot of courses in Enviro Sci. So you always have that opportunity to, if you're enrolled in one, still take courses in other programs. And if you really want a course that you're not eligible for, you can always email the program, and a lot of the times they're very receptive and they will allow you to take that course. And then, last but not least, I think you should join clubs. You should take on any opportunities. Teaching assistant opportunities are amazing. They're an amazing way to not only earn as you're working, but also be exposed to that teaching environment where you're basically guiding the tutorials that you're a part of in first year. So I think that's a very cool opportunity and something that I found out about much later on. And I wish I had known earlier so that I could get involved earlier. So those are just a couple recommendations, and that is the end of my slideshow. So if you guys have any questions or if we're going to Catherine, Davina can let us know.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll let Catherine do her presentation and then
Okay,
we'll
perfect.
field questions and either of you can answer based on who you think
Perfect.
has the more relevant experience. But yeah, thank you so much for putting that
Thank
together
you.
for everyone.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you can see it. Okay. Sorry, my slideshow is really short compared to Sarah's. I think I'm just going to talk a bit about my background. Can you see my screen and also hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. So I'm currently doing a gap year and I'm working at my local hospital. Oh, sorry, I'm Catherine, by the way. And I work in admitting and registration. And prior to that, I did my undergrad at Queen's Health Sciences. And then during my time in undergrad, I was able to continue a lot of my extracurriculars that I did in high school. So, for example, I did competitive dance, so I was able to continue dance in undergrad and also do new things like flag football. I felt like extracurriculars were super important in terms of med school as well. Even if it's not directly med related, it can help teach you a lot of different skills that apply to how you treat your patients. And then I was also able to do a lot of clinical research. So I did a lot of different projects all over Ontario. I did cardiac research and oncology. Sorry, I did cardiac research in Hamilton, and then I did oncology research in Toronto, and then I continued my thesis in gastroenterology in Kingston. And then I was also able to continue some of my volunteering at different hospitals and also continue teaching dance. And then in terms of stats, I had a 3.95 GPA, and I also took the MCAT 3 times, similar to Sarah. So every other summer, I would kind of take it and then apply. And then I finished with the MCAT of 504, which is, I guess it's above average, but anyways, we can talk about MCAT if you guys have questions about that. Yeah, I have a relatively short presentation. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen, we have some people that are ready to ask both of you questions. And thanks so much again for putting together the presentation. And so we'll just go through everyone that has questions now. Just a reminder that if you've already asked a question to our first speaker, just hold off on raising your hands right now. And then I'm just wondering for both of you, Sarah and Catherine, are you both comfortable like sharing an email address for participants to contact you afterwards?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, awesome. So we'll get started with Dean. I think Dean has his hand up.
Hello. So I just had a question. I was curious about how do you guys go about managing like research opportunities during your like undergrad or postgrad, and like how do you guys go about reaching out to like I guess find those opportunities? Like I know you could do like cold emails or like do you know someone? Just like how do you guys go about that?
Sarah, do you want to take this or I can take it? Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead with it, or go ahead.
I can just go after you and just add anything if I'm like from
Okay.
personal experience.
So, for my personal experience, I was actually very terrified going in because everyone had freaked me out after high school saying that research was impossible to find. And so I kind of started very early on. As soon as I got, like, as soon as I like selected McMaster, I was like, okay, I need to start emailing people. But one of the things that I kind of found worked for me a lot more was the profs that I was working with in first year. So even like for example, the biology professor who was teaching us, she does a lot of research on the side. And so what you could do is you can just email her and be like, look, I'm taking this course with you. I think like I love the way that you're teaching and I would love to see if there's any other opportunities to get involved in research with you. And a lot of the times, these professors would email back, and if you ask early enough, then they would have spots available. So that's how I ended up getting my research position with my first prof. Was I just emailed after I took a course with her, and I was like, look, like I love the way like you taught. You obviously tell your interests and how they align with them. And then she replied and she was like, I would love to do research. And then after that, she actually connected me to one of her colleagues because she was booked for the next year. So she connected me to one of her colleagues and she was like, do research with him, he's amazing. And then that's where my seminar group, we all worked together with that colleague. And so for me, I got the research. The two positions that I got were like from the course instructor and then her connecting me to someone else. And then one of them I did get by cold emailing, but I only had to email about like 7, 8 people before I got that response. And I would really, really recommend that you start emailing as early as possible because oftentimes by like December, all these professors and doctors are already booked up. So every time that I would email, they would say, oh, we would have loved to, but we're already booked up because students emailed us a few months in advance. So if you want to, for the next year, I would recommend just starting emailing in like September or like emailing then again in like January for that coming semester. So that's just how that was my experience with getting research. And I don't know if Catherine wants to add.
Yeah, I'll definitely go through how I got research. I would say my first summer, I barely had any experience, so that when I was cold emailing, I wasn't really sure what to write at all. But I sort of drew upon my experiences in high school and also just any little small thing I could pull from volunteering. I would say for me, it wasn't through course instructors. I do find that it sometimes depends on the course. I know some of my courses or like majority of courses had like 300 students in them, and the majority of them all just wanted research. So I'd say sometimes, yes, that works if the class is a bit smaller. But I would say all of my research opportunities were through cold emailing. And I would email like almost 100 and get like two replies. I was not very lucky. I would say when you're cold emailing, just keep it short, like one sentence, like why you like the research and why you're like a good fit for them. These doctors get like thousands of emails about these, and just keeping it short is best. First summer was I did it through a program. So I did I think University of Toronto has this like undergraduate summer program. Also Sunnybrook, there's a lot around the GTA. Um, so I did that one through that. And then the second summer was through my So I was talking, like connecting and networking during my first research job, and then I was able to like secure something for the next year through like talking with them. And then my last research opportunity was through cold emailing again for my thesis. Um, yeah, I would say I also agree with Sarah to start super early. Um, I would say before December of the summer of next year is like latest. I would say best is like September, November. Yeah, I think it should be all.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I just wanted to tell everyone as well that I'm going to be teaching like a cold emailing and research and shadowing workshop for the session on Wednesday. So if they have more questions about that, I could take those on Wednesday as well. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing how you both got research. Our next question is from Harshit.
Can you two hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So first off, thank you so much for coming to this meeting and taking the time to answer all of our questions and to present your work. So my question was, what extracurriculars would you recommend for a high school student to get into a good college and a good medical school?
I guess I can start off with this one. To be honest, I would just do what you enjoy, like a broad spectrum of whatever you enjoy, because I find that when you're writing essays and like talking about them, you can tell when people are like interested in what they do. And then they're also really able to like apply that to what they want to do for the rest of their lives. Like for me, I did a lot of extracurriculars. Like the majority of them that was not research was just like for personal enjoyment. Like an example of this is like continuing to dance and also like work with kids like within the dance studio. Like it's not directly med related, but it's something that I really like doing and what I grew up doing. And like it really taught me how to like, for example, advocate for people and advocate for like people that can't necessarily speak up for themselves, and also like taught me how to be a leader and also like organize different like things for them, and like organize different classes and also work with parents. Um, I would say like in terms of university, yeah, it's similar to also med school. I don't know if you have anything to add, Sarah.
No, I think my answer would have honestly been the same. I found that whenever I've like thought that I should join a club because this would help me in the future, I've always slacked off because it's something that I'm not interested in at all. And then for me, for example, like Make-A-Wish Foundation is something that they really were a really huge part of my family when we went through a really big crisis. And so it was something from my childhood that I was like, I need to give back. I really want to work with them. And so when the time came in high school, I got involved with them. And so even in undergrad, I kind of continued that. And I feel that was a really huge part of my journey where it wasn't something that was directly med related, but it was a huge part of how like I got interested in med and how that passion kind of grew from working with these organizations. So I feel like when it comes to extracurriculars, it never really has to do with what you think would look good to medical school, because I think anything that you're passionate about and you talk about that in your interviews, saying, look, this club I started because this is the experience I went through, and that's why I feel like I learned how to work with people with intellectual needs or with like physical needs. And because of that, I feel like because medical schools are able to see that you didn't just choose something based off of what would look good to them, they end up liking that more because it's more authentic. Also for undergrad though, like to get into undergrad, I'm not sure, it might have changed now, but during my time, it was only like I didn't have to put any activities that I had done. I'm not sure if it's different now, but like when I applied to Mac, I didn't have to, like they only looked at my GPA. And then when I applied to Queens, they only looked at like my essays. So I guess in the essays I talked about my activities. So I think it's more focused, like your question might be more focused on like med acceptance. And I think honestly, like join whatever. Like I was a part of the Desi Students Association, like random clubs that I thought were really interesting. And I think like that ended up working out.
I did want to add that, like, I think that the only one thing that's kind of I wouldn't say it's required, but I would say like majority of med schools look for like some sort of clinical research or not clinical research, but like any research because it does like really touch on some of these like CAN med roles, which are like Canadian med school roles that you can find online. But I would say research is just one thing that like it's like if you don't have it, it's definitely okay, but it's something that can really showcase like your skills as like a future medical student.
Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Haley.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. My question is, since both of you guys have talked about how like we should consider volunteering and giving back to the community and just being like really involved in everything, what's the best way to find places to volunteer in?
I think I can start with that. Um, I think it Oops, sorry, I'm muted. I think it really depends on like what you're interested in. So for example, like one of the things that I knew that I wanted to get involved in as soon as I got into undergrad was Oh, it was, like, volunteering at the senior home, and so I just searched up senior homes near my house. There was actually one that's, like, 2 minutes away, so I went and then I applied to them, and it ended up going through, and then I think oftentimes, like, if there's something that you think you'd wanna try out so, for example, one of the other things that I wanted to try out was tutoring, and so, what I did was one of my friends was tutoring at the time and she was going to quit soon and she needed someone to swap her role and it was just that connection that ended up like scoring me that role and I got exposed to the tutoring aspect of it. And so I believe when it comes to opportunities, I would say just search what you're interested in areas around you so that it's convenient for you to get to even if like you're exhausted and you don't want to commute as much. And then more than that, if it's like, for example, at the university, a lot of these clubs are very, very open to accepting new students and having people join, even if that's as volunteers. So if you want to just see how a club is like, you can let them know. You can say, I want to test it out first. And so they will let you kind of do like a trial run of it. And if it's something that you're passionate about, then you can apply to it in the long run. I'm not sure if I answered the question though. Was that your question, Catherine? Did I answer?
I think you did. Maybe the question asker can.
Yeah.
I think for volunteering is just very like it's less intense than like a paid role. Like
Yeah, like I think you can get a position with like most of the people that you ask.
yeah, I would say like super neurotic people might like stick to a theme. Like some people when they're applying, they're like, oh, I want a theme within my like application. So like an example would be like I like working with kids, so I teach with kids, I volunteer with kids, like etc. But that's to be honest, that's not really what I did. I just did what I wanted to do.
Yeah. I also just feel like they can always tell that there's a theme. Like, you don't necessarily have to try to force it. Like, even with I love working with kids, but that was never my intention behind why I was volunteering there. It was simply because I really wanted to spend time with kids. So I volunteered at the daycare or I volunteered at PLASP. And I think that's something that the med school system can just detect itself when they're reading through applications that this person seems passionate about it. So honestly, I know it sounds redundant, but I think you should just go with what you're truly passionate about and look for opportunities in that.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Our next question is from Maria.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. So my question is, how do you guys manage to balance your artistic and general outside hobbies with demanding workloads?
I could start with this one. I would say that the majority of like, because for me, research was very intensive and it kind of took away from like a lot of my academics. So I would purely do research during the summer. That's not really like what everyone does, but it's kind of what I chose to do. And then in terms of like extracurriculars and hobbies, like things like going to a dance class or like doing intramurals for me was like a break. So instead of like, I don't know, scrolling on TikTok for an hour, I would just be out like outside, like playing with my friends and things like that. So it really didn't feel like, oh, I have to go and do this like hobby or like chore. It was more like, oh, thank God I can like take a break and, like not focus on schoolwork. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Sarah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think one of the other things that I was very focused on throughout my undergrad was balancing my courses, where first year is very, very hectic, and you're essentially with about 1,000 other students in your program, and so you know that you don't have that much flexibility with talking to a professor and being like, "Look, life's getting tough." Like, I know some other programs have that flexibility, which we didn't. And so one of my main focuses was if I'm taking a biology course and a chemistry course, then my other electives were I was going to make sure were easy, and I would make sure that they didn't have final exams. So that's actually something I would really recommend to anyone going into undergrad is like really balance out your schedule. And I did use Reddit, which I know it's not recommended, but it gave me an idea of what a course is like. Then I would go and rate my prof. I would search up the professor, and a lot of the time students have put like their grade next to the course that they took and like a little blurb of how it was. So I would read that for the course that I was interested in, and I would then look at the course outline, and if it didn't have a final exam, it was relatively easy compared to what I was seeing online, I would enroll in that. And so that ways, if I have 3 really heavy courses that I know I'm gonna be, like, dying with, then I have 2 other courses that I can, like, breathe with a little bit. And so when those days would come, for example, if I was taking EnviroSci, which was known to be a lighter course, if I was taking that course, then those days I could also spend doing some of my other hobbies and activities. So it was just balancing my time with the hard courses and the easy courses. And that's something I would really recommend. Like, it's genuinely something that kept me from burning out.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
I don't know
Thank
if I
you.
can add to that if we have time for that.
I think maybe for now we'll go on to the next question, but maybe we can send you some follow-up questions and you guys can respond over email if that works. Okay, awesome. So our next question is from Beatrice.
Hi, were there any specific classes you took in high school that you think that helped you getting in medical school?
I can start off very like I did the IB program. I don't know if any of you guys are in that. I'm doing I did the diploma, so like all my courses were already chosen for me. But I did the high level bio, and that was pretty useful for first year bio. But to be honest, you definitely don't need those like higher level courses going into undergrad.
Yeah, I would back that up too. Like, I just felt like when I got into undergrad, I was like, I stressed too much in high school. I wish that like I had taken a little bit of like, I know it's very, very stressful, but a little bit more time to enjoy actual high school because at the end of the day, like you're going to learn everything that you need in university, or even if it's not in university, then when you're studying for exams like the MCAT, you have to learn all of bio, all of chemistry, all of physics, and essentially you're learning everything you need for medical school in that test already. So it's and you're taking courses in undergrad. So for medical school, I would say that you don't need to stress too much about that in high school, where you should take courses if like there's another course that you're interested in, take that. I took drama, I took music, I took business, I took law. Like, I took all sorts of courses in high school, and it didn't affect my undergrad or my medical school. So I think just if that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Our next question is from Zara.
Hi, so I'm going into undergrad actually, but one of the main things I'm nervous for as a pre-med is MCAT and like finding that study timeline, that balance, because I know personally I'm a big procrastinator and finding like that balance, like retaining information. How did you guys like manage it and what did it look like for you?
Okay, so I'll start with that. Um, I know the MCAT is like the most terrifying exam ever. I've been there. So one of the things that so my sister's also like a doctor in Toronto, and so one of the things she really recommended when I got into undergrad was she said write your MCAT early, and at the time I didn't see the benefit of that, and but now I do. Like I'm so glad I wrote it in second year summer. So one of the things that I would recommend is your second year is still not as hectic when it comes to your undergrad, and that summer especially, you have 4 months. You get off in April essentially, and then you have until September. So approximately you can spend like 2 to 3 months if you want to study fully for the MCAT. Spend those months and then you can write your MCAT in August. Have your score by September because it takes a month for the score to come out. And then in September, once you get your score, then applications are due in October. So it gives you that wiggle room to like be able to write your applications if you're eligible. And if you're not, then at least you know you can apply to the schools that that don't require the MCAT or that you do meet the requirement for. But I think like it is a very, very busy schedule and it is a time in your life that you're going to have to dedicate to the actual test. And as much as I would say that I wish like it wasn't as rigorous, it is a very, very rigorous schedule that you have to follow. I'm not sure if Catherine has other opinions on it, but I personally found the MCAT studying schedule to be very, very like cutthroat. And then the thing is, like something I would recommend is if you are a fast learner, my friend did it in 20 days. She studied for it. She did a few questions. She went and she did the MCAT. She got a 517 on it, which is like amazing. So I feel like if you find that you're that type of like someone who studies really fast, wants to go give it and thinks they'll do well, then you could try that as well, and then you'll have an opportunity to redo it. So what I always did was I made sure that I kept myself the opportunity to do it again in the same year. So for example, I would write it end of July. So usually July 28 was when I would write it. Then I would get my results on August 28, and then that ways I could redo it by September 12th, I think is the deadline. So it would give me that wiggle room to do it again, and then if I met the cutoff, then at least I would be eligible for all the medical schools, and if I didn't, then at least I applied and I did my best. So that was I would like it is a scary schedule, but if you set a schedule and you follow that routine, then hopefully it becomes a little bit easier. And Catherine, what about you?
Sure, yeah, the MCAT was probably not very enjoyable from my experience. I did also take it 3 times, so it was pretty difficult. I would say majority of people will take 3 months, like no extracurriculars, maybe like 4 hours volunteering a week, and just focus on MCAT full time for that one summer. And yeah, I do agree. Most students take it the summer after second year, so that they have time to like take it again before they apply like again next year. I did take a course, like that's definitely an option. So some people take courses that help them, or they just buy the textbooks, things like that. I think someone asked like what the MCAT structure is. It's like a 7-hour exam, and it's like bio, chem, physics, English, psych,
Yeah, the
soc.
first section is Chem Phys, so chem and physics. The second section is which one? Cars. The third cars is basically for me it was the most difficult section, and it's one where no matter how like I believe that you really need to get in a routine of doing cars. So, for example, even for 2 months, if every single morning you just wake up and you do like 2 to 3 cars passages at least daily, it could help like start training your brain a little bit to think the way that MCAT is structuring their questions. And so hopefully that helps you score better in cars. But yeah, the second section is cars. The third is biochem, and then the last one is psych and sociology.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Our
Thank you.
next question is from Zara Sakebi.
Yeah, hello, it's lovely to meet both of you guys. One thing I have for Catherine, but of course Eric can answer too. One thing I noticed from your slideshow was that you took flag football and also dance. In my school, I'm sure this is in a lot of schools too, but for underclassmen, it's like required to take either PE or if you want to do like another sport outside of that. My question is if I should continue with the 4 year of a sport, and if that will look good on my application, or if I should take those 2 years and apply it to something more medical related.
Are you asking like course wise or yeah, course wise?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. For me, I think I just did the grade 9 credit or whatever, and then I stopped doing gym after that. So I did dance outside, like I did competitive dance outside of high school, and then the flag football thing was something that I did new like in university and undergrad. Um, yeah, to be honest, I feel that when I did my applications for med, like the majority, like I wouldn't really talk about high school. Like I think the only one or two things was just like an award that I got when I graduated. And that's it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
Also, something just on the side note, I know that medical schools really like, rather than you just listing like 50 clubs that you're on, they like to see that you've been consistent with the club and improving in your role. I know this was something that a former med student told me, like when I joined undergrad, and I feel that that was something that really helped shape my mindset when it came to joining clubs, where it wasn't just like I'm joining it for one semester and I'm gonna quit and then I'm going to join another and then another. Like I think you should if you're not unhappy in a if you're unhappy in a club and then you want to transition to another one. But otherwise it's really good if for example you start off as a general member, then you go to an executive position and then you like and then you can even talk about that in your application where you can say like you started off as general member and now you're as an executive because it shows that you're able to excel in one environment and that's something that medical schools do look for.
One follow-up question, like to add on to that. Do you think like um if I were not to, let's say, advance in that in basketball or something, I should probably move on to something different in my junior or senior year of high school?
No, no, no. Sorry, this was for undergrad, by the way. Like, so my activities in high school, like, I was on clubs and stuff, and I started a few, but for me, like, my high school stuff didn't really count towards my med school. Like, whatever I put on my application was mostly from undergrad, and you'll find that a lot of people are putting mostly undergrad stuff. But if you want to put something from high school, then it would only be grade 11 and 12. So it like they wouldn't really know about what you did in grade 9 or 10 anyways. But I meant in undergrad. Like I would recommend like if you're interested in a club and you're like, "Oh, I see you doing this club for like 3, 4 years," then I would rather stick to that and just continue like, doing good in that club and essentially getting a better role if you're able to, because that might be more beneficial than like hopping from like 5, 6 clubs from one to the other and not having that much of a timeline. Because in your application, you do have to put a timeline of like when you started and when you ended. So I believe it looks a little bit better, which Catherine can talk on this, if like you have a club that you've been on for a longer time rather than a bunch that are just shorter time frames.
Yeah, I just agree with what you said. Yeah, like a longer term thing in terms of any extracurricular shows that you're committed to something and that you've like grown within an organization.
Awesome. Okay. We'll take two more questions from people. And then, of course, if people didn't get a chance to ask you the questions today, we'll share your contact information with them and they're welcome to reach out. And we'll probably do another evening informal Q&A session as well. So don't worry if you didn't get a chance to ask questions today. So we'll do Hannah and then Grace. So Hannah, you're up first.
Hi, it's nice to meet both you guys. I was wondering when you guys were applying to med school, what was one thing that you spent too much time worrying about that actually ended up mattering less than you?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually don't know. Do you have an answer for that?
Sorry, that I focused on that didn't really matter. I don't know. I think like after
Yeah,
getting into
here, I
TMU,
can
I
repeat.
was just thinking
Yeah.
that, but I think it's important to like be able to apply broadly. I don't think that I had like regrets. Maybe I would say maybe
Mhm.
like first year applying, my essays weren't very good, and
Mm.
I think that's maybe it. I
I
think
feel
I'm
like
someone that like leaves last minute a lot, and then like when I was doing my med school applications, like some of the essays, like I kept on like wanting to change things, and then I like put things to the last minute a little, but I think that's just like a me thing.
I
okay,
feel
that's good.
like
Well,
one
thanks for
of
your
the, I
answers.
don't know if this would be a regret. I don't know if this would be a regret, but one of the things that I feel, I mean, the MCAT is a huge part of the med cycle, especially if you're applying to other med schools. But I was very, very like not confident in the score that I had. And then, but I ended up applying to UBC Medical School as well, just because I was like, you know, I meet the requirement, I might as well do it. But I wasn't anticipating an interview just because my MCAT score was much lower than what they usually take. And then I did end up getting an interview from UBC as well. And so I think that kind of like showed me that yes, the MCAT matters, but you don't have to have the highest, most perfect MCAT to be eligible. Like it's okay to not have the best score and you'll still be okay if it comes to like Canadian med.
Okay,
Awesome.
awesome.
Thank
Just a
you.
really quick follow-up question.
Oh, I don't
Wait,
think we have any time for follow-ups today, sorry. But you're welcome to ask the questions that you have any follow-ups afterwards. Thank you. So we'll go to Grace now.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, wait, sorry. Yeah, Grace Miller,
So
you go ahead.
so I'm about to enter my second year of undergraduate, and I'm currently involved in research. I've been doing shadowing hours, and I'm about to get some like certifications. What would you say is one of the most important aspects of like your medical school application out of those, including like MCAT scores? And on your, I'm sorry, it's so loud. I can't like be at home right now, but when you applied to medical school during your interview, did you declare what type of focus in medicine that you wanted to go to, or did you say that you were open to just like any sort of future and like understanding that stuff in rotations, if that makes sense?
I could start with some of those questions. I would say like in interviews, well, when I was preparing for interviews, I was more focused on primary care because I think that a lot of Canadian med schools nowadays are very focused in primary care. And you don't really have to go into primary care, but it's just something that, like in Canada, like we have a big shortage of like family doctors, for example. And then I would say, like, for most important part of application, I think nowadays so many people apply to med school that it's very hard to just have like one important thing. I would say everything is important to like put your time into. I think in terms of MCAT, most schools are a cutoff nowadays. So if you're over like 500, I think over like the median in every single section, then it puts you in a really good place for like majority of Canadian med schools. And then I would say GPA is one of the most important things because majority of schools have like a very high standard for GPA. Um, and then I don't know, extracurriculars, I would say majority of schools also like place like importance in extracurriculars. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I don't know if I got all the questions.
Yeah,
No, that's perfect. I'm sorry.
there were a bunch of questions. Was there anything that wasn't answered?
No, I think that was perfect actually. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Also, just one random thing that came to my mind. One of my biggest regrets in undergrad was taking organic chemistry during the year. So if you're someone who like takes chemistry in first year and you're like, I just don't know about orgo, like, because it is more difficult, I would highly, highly recommend that you either wait until after you've graduated, because if you take a course in your gap year, then a lot of Canadian universities don't actually count it in your GPA. So that would save your GPA if you think a course is going to butcher it. Secondly, Orgo actually isn't a requirement anymore for most of the Canadian medical schools except for Ottawa, I think. And so even that you can get around with some of the other chemistry courses. So I would just, if there's any course that you think would butcher your GPA, don't take it until after you've graduated. Or if you want to take it during like your undergrad, do it in the summer, because course like programs like, for example, I think it's U of T, they don't consider your summer courses in your GPA, but like it still meets the requirement. So that ways you're kind of cheating the system of like not letting the bad courses ruin your GPA. So that's just a tip that I wish I knew when I took Orgo.
I definitely also agree with the hard course thing, because some of the courses I took were purely out of interest, but then I realized like a few months in that they don't grade easily at all. And that's something that's kind of difficult about like med school, is that like they don't really care what an undergrad that you come from. They just look at your GPA. So it's very hard to do something where it's like, oh, I really enjoy like an engineering course, and then the GPA drops you down, and then it's kind of just I don't want to say like it kind of just affects how you like how you're seen by a lot of medical schools, like in terms of GPA.
Yeah, I personally love bird courses. What bird courses are basically courses that are known to be easy, like good marks. And like I know that it sucks, but unfortunately, I think like with the medical field and knowing that you have to have a good GPA, I think it's very, very important that you just research some of the bird courses in your university. So I had a whole list, and basically every single year, and those courses everyone knows that they're better, like easier to get A pluses in, and so people will try to fill those courses up very easy, like fast. And so my goal would always be to make sure that those were some of my buffer courses. So if I'm taking chemistry, biophysics, then two of my other courses will be the bird courses. So it's easier workload, but also B, I know that I'm getting an A+ in those, hopefully, so that like if I'm not doing that well in the other courses, then that balances out. So look into easy courses in your university. Like it will save your GPA, and I think you really need that for med school.
I would also say if you're going to Queens, we have something called like grade distributions, where you can see exactly how many people got A+s and A's and like the distribution. And then that can really help you like decide on some courses, because we literally have some courses where it's like 80% A+, and those are the types of courses I would go for.
Yeah.
So much.
Awesome. Okay, we'll do one very last question from Grace K or Grace Cathuria, and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, thank you for doing this. I was just curious about like your guys' experience with psychology and like other like types of that class, like that aren't like directly like life science classes, but like they're pretty important for the MCAT.
Sure. I guess I could start off with some personal experience with this. I would say in terms of like in undergrad, I never took any psych classes because um, psych at Queens is known to be very, very difficult, and I just wanted to protect my GPA. And then for the MCAT, I definitely self-studied it. I think majority of people that I know self-studied for the psych section at least, because just using flashcards can get you a pretty average score.
I actually had the exact same path too. I avoided first year psych because I had heard terrible things about it. Like in terms of difficulty, people absolutely love psych. And if you're really passionate about it, I have no doubt you'll do really well. But I know myself, and I knew that I would butcher my GPA if I took that course. So I avoided it. And then when it came time for the MCAT, so everyone used to tell me that psych is the easiest section on the MCAT. And I know that for most people it is, but for myself, it wasn't. Psych was actually one of the sections that I really, because I double think a lot, every single time I would get a question on the MCAT and I would be like, this is a very straightforward answer, I would overthink myself into choosing the wrong answer. So then what I did the next time that I was doing the MCAT, I made a bunch of cue cards, and basically it was every single term that I was learning on UWorld. So one of the best MCAT tools is UWorld, and you basically get a question bank of like 4,000 questions, and they're much more difficult than the actual MCAT. So if you get really good at those, then you're basically set for the actual MCAT. And so what I did was I went through the psych section, psych and sociology section on the UWorld, and every single time I would get a question wrong or a term would come up that I didn't know, I would just make a cue card about it, and then I would rehearse those cue cards every 2 or 3 days whenever it was my psych day, and then that basically helped drill everything for psych in me. And then the next time I did my MCAT, my psych section went significantly higher because I had done that routine. But UWorld, highly recommend for all sections, especially psych. And then also Anki is really good for MCAT. And yeah, I think those were the best tools probably. And the Kaplan books for the original studying.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. I think that wraps up our time for our med student Q&A, but I really appreciate it again if everyone can give Sarah and Catherine just a really big Zoom round of applause and thank them for coming out to speak to all of us today. We'll provide you with their contact information after the program as well so that you can reach out to them and ask them some questions that you weren't able to reach out to and ask today live. But we'll also probably be organizing some additional evening sessions for those of you that really want to ask your questions face to face. But again, thank you so much to Sarah and Catherine. Lots of thank yous are pouring in the chat. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us.
Of course, thank you so much. Good luck to every single person that's applying. I know it's a very intimidating process, but you got this.
Thank you and good luck.
Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Bye, guys.
All right, perfect. So we're going to go into our guest speaker workshop part of our session today. So I'm actually very excited to introduce Dr. Hamza Khan, and he recently defended his PhD at the University of Toronto, and we're actually in the same faculty there. So I'm going to introduce him, and then I'll let him get started with his workshop. He really loves teaching and is passionate about it. So I'm actually very excited for all of you to get to hear from him today. So Dr. Khan is currently doing an internship actually in regulatory affairs in oncology at AstraZeneca. And so he's getting experience in regulatory strategy and the development of therapies for gastrointestinal cancers. And like I mentioned, he recently defended and completed his PhD at the University of Toronto in the Institute of Medical Science. And so his research was mostly focused on identifying plasma biomarkers and developing machine learning models to improve the diagnosis and prognosis of different vascular diseases. And so, in addition to research, he has done just so many extracurriculars and probably gotten every award possible at the University of Toronto, which is very well deserved. But he was the co-president of the Institute of Medical Science Student Association and the director of Pueblo Science, which he'll tell you a little bit about. It's a really amazing Canadian not-for-profit organization that promotes science education in undeserved communities. He's also worked as a clinical research coordinator at Sunnybrook Health Sciences, and he's actually also going to be starting medical school in the fall. And so if you have any questions for him, he's done probably every extracurricular possible and excelled in it. So I'm sure he's happy to tell you all about it. But first, we'll go through his lecture for today, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. And then Hamza, if people want to reach out to you after the session, you can let me know if that's possible.
Thank you so much, Davina. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me. I don't know why my camera's kind of blurry, but whatever. Anyways, can I just add my 2 cents about med school? Is primarily everybody in high school here?
I think, yeah, most of our audience is in high school, and we have some non-traditional students and undergraduate students as well.
Okay, nice. If you're in high school, your primary you shouldn't be thinking about the MCAT right now. Your thought should be, I need to get a 4.0 in first and second year. That's your goal. Okay. So if you're in high school, forget about the MCAT, think about 4.0 in undergrad. Okay, that should be your primary goal. Anyways, I just wanted to say that. But I'm gonna, oh, sorry, let me stop sharing this. I don't know what the structure like normally you guys have had for these, but how I want to do it is I'm gonna talk a little bit about myself first, and then I'm gonna do a little bit of a lecture style talk about the research that I do, and kind of like how I kind of went through like my research degree and stuff like that. And then a little bit of tips for some of you guys at the end as well, then we can talk about it. So just a little bit about me. Tavina, thank you so much. I sent her a really long explanation of what I do because I've done so many things. But I just graduated with my PhD just a few weeks ago from the Institute of Medical Science. Me and Davina studied together. I was the president of the Student Association. I'm starting med school in September. And I'm director of Public Science. It's an incredible charity. I would recommend you looking it up. Um, what we do is we teach in Indigenous communities across the globe. So I've taught in Indigenous communities here in Canada, in the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand. We've done Jamaica, Guyana, things like that. And we go to really rural areas and we teach science using hands-on materials for people who may not. I am also a little sick, so I might be like sniffling. We teach science using like hands-on material and things that are available in their communities, right? So a lot of people aren't as lucky as we are. They don't have big classrooms, they don't have like computers and things like that. So we like to take fun science to those rural communities. And you guys as high school students, you guys can definitely also help out. We have a lot of things happening in Toronto, so look us up and sign up for the email, and we would love to see you. One thing about me is I will spend all of my money on traveling. I don't care about saving. You only live once, so travel as much as you can. That's my most important uh, advice is spend your money on traveling because it's so worth it. So how old do you guys think I am? I'm 31. Okay. I'm 31 and I still don't really know what I'm doing. I know people in high school are probably like, "Oh my gosh, this person is 31. I want to be a rich when I'm 30. Like I don't want to be in school." But genuinely, like I feel like most people like in your higher ages can agree that like no one really knows what they're doing in life, right? This is the first life we're living. So honestly, don't stress about things. You guys are in high school, undergrad, you're still super, super young. If you have no clue what you're doing, that's okay. My biggest advice is just like find things that you find interesting and pursue them. And if you like never let a door close, if you have an opportunity to do something and you're unsure of like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not, just do it because you never know what's gonna come out of the other side. This is my journey. So I did my undergrad at the University of Toronto. I did a double major in human biology and physiology. In my undergrad, like I was so cocky for some reason. Like I thought I was going to get into med school right out of undergrad, and like I didn't do anything else, which was so dumb. I didn't do research. I didn't do anything. I was so naive thinking that it was so easy to get into med school. Fourth year came around, I got rejected from med school and had like a huge crisis of like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I didn't know. I hated research at the time. I thought it was lame. I didn't want to do it. But then I was like, okay, well, I need to get into research because I have nothing else to do. So I applied to like 60 different labs and only one person responded to my email. And that was my current supervisor for my PhD. So I started research. I did my master's with him. I took some time off. I worked at the ICU at Sunnybrook because this was during COVID. And then I came back to do my PhD. And now I've like fallen in love with research. And if you told my undergrad self that like you would be doing research, you'd be a researcher, I would have been like, you're crazy. I hate research so much, but now it's like become a really big passion of mine. So that's why I say when you're unsure of like whether you'll like something, don't put it off until you actually try it because you might fall in love. I'm currently doing a quick internship with AstraZeneca to like dip my toes into industry, and it's been such incredible experience. And then I'm starting med school in September. So this is my internship currently. I put this slide in because you guys are in high school and in undergrad, and like I'm doing an internship as a PhD, but there's opportunities for high school students and undergrads to do internships with these big pharma companies. So look into them and apply for them and try because um, like industry is a really interesting way of using like your science and your medical learning and knowledge to apply to like business, right? So these are I work in oncology, so these are big cancer trials and big drugs that are being tested on cancer patients, and it's my job to help understand the data that we see in these clinical trials. And give that data to Health Canada, work with Health Canada to kind of help them understand what the data is, what it means, get their approval, and then bring these drugs directly to patients. So that's what regulatory affairs is. But there's so many different like topics you can cover, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit later in the lecture. Um, but I just wanted to talk about like what potentially my career is. Like I said, I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm starting med school in September. I'm probably going to do pediatric cardiology with my experience with blood flow science and my research in cardiovascular. I think that's really interesting. And or also plastic surgery. I'm really interested in like cosmetic plastics. So that might be something I'm interested in. Pharmaceutical physician is another good thing if you're not so into like working in a hospital or working with patients. There's something where you can work, like for example, with AstraZeneca. You can make between like 700 to $1 million a year, which is like insane. But these big pharmaceutical companies pay a lot of money for physicians, so that's something I'm also looking into. And then I also want to do research at U of T, so hopefully we can continue to do some research. So, what comes to mind when you think about cardiovascular research? I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to share. Oh wait, I'm going to stop presenting this. I want to switch to this. I just want to know, like, what comes to your mind when you think about research? Because you guys are like high school and undergrad, so like this is a big word cloud. So like, just if you use your phones, and open up that link and just put in some words, like type in some words about what you think when you hear like heart research or cardiovascular research. Type in some words and submit them, and let's see what you guys think. Complex, okay. Why is this so slow? Oh, shoot. Hypothesis, disease, stem cells, nice. Blood, that's a good one. Heart is big, yeah. Blood. I'm happy people wrote blood. That's a good one. All right. Blood vessels, awesome. I'm happy people put blood in blood vessels because when people think about cardiovascular research, a lot of it is heart, right? People think heart, but blood being a big one is awesome. Okay, I'm gonna stop this now just for time's sake, but good. I really like this. Okay, keep that in mind. Blood, arteries, vessels. Wow, you guys are smart. Okay, I'm impressed. So, um, the research that I do, I'm gonna go into now like my actual cardiovascular research. Um, and I like to start off this by talking about a patient that we actually see. So I work in the vascular surgery department at St. Michael's Hospital. Okay. So we look at, when we think of cardiovascular or vascular, we look at everything except for the heart. So we're the ones who look at the arteries, the veins, the blood. So that's why I'm happy you guys put that when I said heart research, because cardiovascular is not just the heart. Yes, the heart is the main pump, but there's people who do everything but the heart, and that's people like me. So we see a patient in the vascular surgery department, and these are diseases of like the blood, of the veins, of the arteries, and the capillaries. Okay, those are the type of people that we see in vascular surgery. So we have a patient who comes to us, and he's a smoker, he's a diabetic, and he has cramping in his butt while he's walking, and he has tingling in his toes. Okay, so now we have to kind of figure out what disease this patient has, and we'll talk about it. So, like I said, I work in the cardiovascular system. So, the cardiovascular system is a big closed system that is composed of three main components: it's the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood, right? And like I said, for vascular, we really only care about the blood vessels and the blood. And this is a closed system, so that means there's blood like composed within these blood vessels and within the heart. Your body is not just have blood slushing around, right? It's systematically pumped to organs that need that oxygen, right? And those nutrients. So the blood is really important for my research because we look at the blood has a bunch of components that are really, really important for like physiology and hemostasis and the function of that cardiovascular system, right? And we have things like the red blood cells, and these are the cells in your body that will carry oxygen. They also carry CO2 and bring that to your lungs to be excreted. And they're also very important for pH balance. So they help with regulating your pH. We have things like immune cells and plasma. So the immune cells are the ones that are going to be fighting those infections that you get. They're going to help with wound healing and things like that. Then we have the plasma. This is the liquid part of your blood, and this is what helps dissolve those hormones. It carries all of these cells, it carries all of the nutrients and things like that. And then lastly, we have platelets. People don't really think about platelets, but they're also very, very important. And my research focuses purely on platelets. So what they do is they actually gather at the site of injury and they help prevent leakage of excess blood, right? But they also play a big important they play an important role in so many different things. So they help immune cells, they help red blood cells, they contribute to the plasma, they can affect hormones, they can affect signals, they do so many different things. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So just throw in the chat some cardiovascular diseases that you guys have heard of. What are some cardiovascular diseases? Coronary artery disease, that's a big one. Stroke, good. CAD. CAD is always a big one. Coronary artery disease. PAD. Oh my God, someone wrote PAD. Yay, you guys are so smart. I'm so happy. Sickle cell, myocarditis. Good, good. Okay, awesome. Nice. Stroke, anemia. Awesome. So cardiovascular diseases are a disease of any component of the cardiovascular system, right? Like people think about heart disease. That's the main thing people think about, right? Heart was a big one. But you can have diseases of the capillaries, like diabetic retinopathy, where the capillaries in your retina start to die off and you can't see anymore. You can have blood diseases like sickle cell anemia that people mentioned. You can have arterial diseases like atherosclerosis, which is a big one, and we'll talk about that as well. You can have venous diseases like a DVT. So it's not just the heart, right? Cardiovascular is a huge system, and we have diseases through all of these different systems. We're going to talk about atherosclerosis because atherosclerosis is a huge killer of people around the world, right? We had 89 million deaths, and stroke caused approximately 6.5 million deaths, right? So this is a huge burden on the healthcare system. And we're still kind of struggling to deal with this disease, right? Because it's a disease that affects your whole body. That's what causes strokes. It's what causes heart attacks, and PAD that we're going to talk about, right? And how do platelets actually play a role in this? Remember, I said platelets are really important when it comes to many different things, and they also cause disease if they are not controlled properly. So the platelets are tiny cells in your body, and they help stop bleeding, right? But they also play a big role in atherosclerosis. So they bind to areas where there's plaque. They can stick to them, and they can release lots and lots of like hormones and chemicals. And these chemicals are they're gonna cause more inflammation. So they're gonna cause uh, more cells to come into the. Sorry, I'm getting a message from. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so they're going to cause more inflammation. It's going to actually cause more plaque to grow. You're going to get neutrophils and these inflammatory cells coming and causing more inflammation. And they can also cause blood clots, right? So if it binds to a certain place and the platelets start to aggregate, this is going to cause a clot. And those clots are what sometimes can cause heart attacks and strokes as well. So they play a really big role. And for atherosclerosis, an interesting fact is you can actually sometimes see atherosclerotic plaques starting. So it's called a fatty streak. You can see these fatty streaks in kids as young as 5 years old, right? So this is a huge issue because of our diet. The mothers, their diet can affect their fetuses and their stomachs, and then they can even have fatty streaks as when they're born, right? So it happens quite early. So this is a really big disease burden that we need to make sure that we're trying to research on. And thrombosis is something where platelets will aggregate and create a blood clot. So the scientific name for blood clot is a thrombosis. So it's just where the platelets activate inappropriately, right? So when they shouldn't, and they create a clot in your blood or a thrombosis in your blood, and that is going to go downstream to an artery and block your heart or block blood to your brain and cause that heart attack or stroke. And when we see patients who have atherosclerosis, remember we said that platelets play a really big role in contributing to atherosclerosis. So we have to give patients a medication called an antiplatelet therapy. So this is a medication where you're inhibiting platelet activity. Okay, so you're preventing the platelets from activating too easily, and that way you're preventing their atherosclerosis from moving, growing too fast, or the thrombus from forming. Okay, does that make sense? If anybody has any questions, please feel free to message in the chat or anything, put up your hand. But this is an example of why uh, it's important to give patients antiplatelet therapies. So when you have plaque, you can see that there's turbulent blood flow, right? Normally, the blood is laminar, so that means it's flowing very smoothly. But when it happens like this, turbulent, what can happen is platelets start to bind to that turbulent plaque because when platelets hit against each other, they activate. And that's what can activate that plaque formation, right? Sorry, the clot formation. So you can see in the video here, when the plaque ruptures or there's turbulent flow, the platelets start now to bind to it and activate. And this is now creating a blood clot, right? And this is a catastrophic situation for a patient because now this is going to block their artery and then they can have a stroke, they can have a heart attack or something like that. So peripheral arterial disease. So this is a disease where there's atherosclerosis in the legs of a patient. Okay, so that means there's not enough blood flow going to their legs because it's getting blocked by the plaque here. Okay. Oh, and this is it can cause something called PAD. Sorry, claudication. So claudication is where a patient walks and they have pain in their legs, and then when they stop, it goes away. But this pain can be so bad that the patient can't even walk a few steps without getting pain, and the pain can be very, very severe, and it can cause cramping. So patients, it's like debilitating for them, right? And patients are at increased risk of needing an amputation because if there's not enough blood flow to the legs can die. Just like a heart attack happens where the heart, there's not enough blood flowing to the heart and the heart can die. That can happen in patients' leg too. What are some of the cons to antiplatelet therapy? Someone's asking. Um, yeah, exactly. It can be dangerous because it can lead to more bleeding, right? You can get bruises and things like that. Um, This is some of the symptoms, and in severe cases, like I said, it can lead to needing an amputation. So I have a picture. This is just some of the risk factors. So smoking is a huge one. If any of you guys are smokers, you got to stop because PAD is a huge smoking disease. It can increase the risk of having PAD by 5 times. Stop smoking. But these are some of the other risk factors for PAD. And a big one is hypercholesterolemia, right? Because atherosclerosis, the plaque is those cholesterol particles are going into your artery, and that's what's creating the plaque. Diabetes also can lead to increased uptake of plaque and can damage your arteries. So that's another reason. And like I said, the two main things that patients that can cause a patient like to die is the thrombus, right? So this is where that thrombus is forming in the artery and there's no blood able to flow through, or complete occlusion. So this happens when there's full blockage of that artery because of the plaque. So now no more blood can flow through. So if you're squeamish, I want you to close your eyes because I have a picture of a patient with PAD in the next photo, and it's very graphic, but this is what can happen to patients who have this disease, okay? Now, I'll let you know if you're not looking at the screen, I'll tell you when it's off the screen, but what you can see is it looks like the patient is a mummy, right? Like his foot is fully dead because there's no blood going to this patient's leg, so it just dies. It's called necrosis, right? There's no blood, so it just fully is dead. And this patient is going to need an amputation now because this is a very high risk of the patient getting sepsis, right? Or bacteria infecting the patient's whole body. So this patient would need to immediately undergo an amputation. And how does it get to this point? The interesting thing is a lot of these patients are in denial. So the patient will see it's a psychological issue, right? So they're seeing their foot, it's black, but to them they're like, oh no, it's okay, nothing's wrong, because just like their psychology is like wreaking havoc because they can't imagine having to lose their leg, right? So it's a really difficult disease. So we know our patient, he has peripheral arterial disease, right? Because he's having cramping in his leg when he walks, And when he stops, it's alleviated. And the tingling can happen because there's no blood going to the patient's leg. It can cause the death of those neurons, right? So the neurons are dying or the nerves are dying. So that's why the patient feels that tingling and pain. So what happens is in the vascular surgery, we'll say, okay, you have PAD. We're going to try and give you medication to help your risk factors. So remember, we talked about those risk factors before. So we're going to give them a statin. This is a medication that's going to reduce their cholesterol. So that's going to help reduce the cholesterol in their blood, help slow down atherosclerosis. We're going to give them an ACE inhibitor, which helps reduce hypertension. So that makes their blood pressure go lower. So there's less stress on the arteries. We're going to give them metformin. So this is help to treat their diabetes. So again, less damage on the arteries. And we're going to give them aspirin. Aspirin is a thrombotic agent. So it's going to antithrombotic agent. So it's going to help inhibit those platelets. So it's going to help prevent them from activating too easily. And we're going to say, go home, exercise, eat healthy, quit smoking, and we'll see you again in 1 year. This is a real patient, by the way. So 1 year later, we saw this patient and he was saying that he exercises, he stopped smoking, he lost some weight, he's eating healthy. But what happened was he ended up having a heart attack and his PAD progressed. It got worse, right? So how did this happen? Why did this happen? If the patient's exercising, he's doing everything properly, right? He's taking his medication, his blood pressure is lower, his cholesterol is lower. Why are we seeing this? So now I'm a master's student, right? So I'm doing research. I'm a new research student. And I see this patient with my supervisor and I say, why is this happening? Like, we want to know why this is happening. So I start to question, why might this be happening, right? And we think, okay, is his medication working? Maybe some of these medications aren't working for our patient. We know his blood pressure medication is working because his blood pressure is lower. We know his cholesterol medication is working because his cholesterol is lower. We know he's exercising because he lost weight. But one thing that we don't know is his aspirin working? Are those antiplatelet medication that we're giving him, are they working? Right now in medicine, no one tests for this ever. So patients are given blood thinners or antiplatelet therapies, and they're never tested if they work, right? So me as a master's student, I was thinking maybe it's not working. Maybe we should be testing for it, right? So I looked up something on the internet and I was like, I started doing research. I looked at articles and I said, are there patients who don't respond to their aspirin therapy? And guess what? Yes. Some people have shown that they're aspirin resistant. So this is something where patients are taking an aspirin, but they might not be responding to it properly, right? So I was thinking, oh my gosh, maybe this patient is aspirin resistant. But like I said, I work in cardiovascular, and in cardiovascular research, no one had done any research on aspirin resistance. No one looked, is aspirin resistance real? Does it exist in patients with PAD? Does it actually cause issues, right? No one knew this. So that's what I decided to do as a researcher. So I said, you know what? My research project is gonna be, let me see if I can determine if aspirin resistance is a real thing in patients with PAD and cardiovascular disease. And if they do have aspirin resistance, could it be causing heart attacks and strokes, right? Because their platelets aren't working, or their aspirin isn't working properly. So they're still going to have a heart attack and a stroke. And I saw this in my patient. So maybe I can do some research to see if this is true, right? Because if I just see it in one patient, that's not good enough for research, right? I need to see it on many, many patients to be able to prove that this is a real thing. Let me Yeah. So what I did was I took the patient's blood, okay, and I took my own blood. Okay. I know I'm healthy, so I feel like I probably won't be aspirin resistant. So what I did was we did something called light transmission aggregometry, and what we do is we take the patient's blood and we isolate their platelets in plasma. It's called platelet-rich plasma. Okay, so it's just think about it with just liquid with only platelets in it from that patient. Okay. And when you put it in this machine, there's platelets floating around in the liquid, right? And when you shine a light through it, it's going to bounce off that platelet. And on the other side, there's going to be no light coming through, right? Because all the light is getting hit off by the platelets and it's getting scattered. Okay. But when I add something called AA, so AA is arachidonic acid, and what it does is it actually activates platelets. Okay. So what should happen is when you add arachidonic acid, it's going to aggregate the platelets are all going to activate. They're all going to stick together. And then now you can see that much more light is able to come through, right? So that's how we can test whether a patient's platelets are activated or not, right? Is by doing this process. And if a patient is on aspirin, then this process should not happen, right? Because the patient's platelets are inhibited, they're not going to be able to aggregate. So even if I add arachidonic acid, we shouldn't see any change in the plasma. Does that make sense? So now this is an actual image of my light transmission aggregometry from my blood. Okay. So you can see here I added, can you guys see my pointer? Let me see if I can, how do I do a pointer?
Yeah, we can
You
see
can
it.
see your pointer. Okay, nice, perfect. So here I'm gonna add arachidonic acid to my blood, right? And you can see that my platelets are activating. If the light transmission is increasing, that means more light is coming through, right? So that means more light is coming through, so that means more platelets are activating. So that means I'm not taking aspirin. So my platelets should activate and they increase, right? Because I'm not taking aspirin. But when I start taking aspirin, so I took aspirin, and you can see nothing happened, right? Because my platelets are now inhibited, so they're no longer active. Does that make sense? But this is my actual patient, okay? This one. This is our patient that we saw. In the black, this black line is the patient's blood, and he is taking aspirin, right? So if he's taking aspirin, it should look like this. Nothing should happen. But he actually looks like me who's not taking aspirin, right? So that means he's not responding to his aspirin at all. So if he had something where like a plaque activated a platelet, it would activate and it would create a clot, which is bad, right? So this shows to me that my patient is not responding to their aspirin therapy. So that means they're aspirin resistant. So I can say, oh my gosh, this is the reason potentially why this patient had a heart attack because he wasn't responding to his medication, right? But again, doing it for one patient isn't good enough for doctors, right? If I go to a doctor and I say, look, this patient is resistant, you should test for every single patient, they're going to be like, this was just a fluke. I don't believe you, right? So as a researcher, now I have to do multiple studies, right? So I have to do a study on many, many patients to show that patients are resistant to their therapy. Okay, so this is what this slide is what is the burden of aspirin resistance? Does it exist in patients? And does it cause heart attacks and strokes? Okay, so that was what my research was. I'm going to skip this slide. So what I did was I said, I'm going to look at 150 different people, okay? 150 patients who I see in the clinic. I'm going to test their aspirin and see if they're resistant or not to their therapy, right? If you see that a good chunk of your patients are resistant, then that means that is a real thing in the patient population, right? But then also, if they're resistant, does it actually negatively impact them? So the patients who are resistant, does it cause more strokes? Does it cause more heart attacks? MI is myocardial infarction or stroke, heart attacks, right? Heart attack, stroke, does it lead to limb amputations? Do they die more easily if they're resistant to therapy? That's what I want to see for my research. So what I saw was we had 68 patients total. And what we saw was that 9 of those patients, which is about like 15% of the patients that we saw, were not responding to their therapy. So 15% of patients is a big chunk of patients, right? That's a lot of patients. So out of 1,000, that's like 150 people, right? Which is a lot. So that means, yes, this disease does exist in patients with PAD. But now I want to know is that in the patients who are resistant to their therapy, do they actually have more strokes and heart attacks than people who are sensitive to their therapy, right? Because we're hypothesizing that if you're not responding to their therapy, then you're going to have more heart attacks and strokes. Does that make sense? So this is where I did this study. So this is in the top right corner, you can see something called a Kaplan-Meier survival analysis. Okay, this is a research method to see between two groups who survives better. Okay, and in our case, we're looking at survival being like who had a heart attack, stroke, or died. Okay, as each time you see this thing go down, that means people died, or people had a heart attack, or people had a stroke. Okay, so the more lower you go, the worse the patient is doing. Right? Does that make sense? The worse the people are doing. So what I did, I had a sample size of 100 and something, I think. I didn't write it here, but it was about 100, around 150 people. And what you can see is I tested their blood and I said, okay, you're resistant to aspirin, you're not resistant, you're sensitive. You're responding to the therapy and you're not, right? So sensitive means that they're responding to their aspirin, so they're good. Their platelets are not activating. Non-sensitive means that they were resistant to their therapy, so they weren't, it was as if they weren't taking aspirin. And you can see a huge difference between the two groups, right? Patients who are not responding to their therapy were way more likely to have a heart attack or stroke or die compared to the ones who are sensitive, right? And I was able to show that patients who are not responding to their therapy were at a 400% increased likelihood of dying from a cardiovascular event than the patients who are sensitive, right? That's huge. 400% is like insane, right? So now when I presented this to the doctors, they were like, oh my God, this is horrible. We need to do something about it, right? So now the further research that we did was, okay, now next, what can we do? We know that this is a huge problem. It's causing people issues. They're not responding to their therapy. So then the next steps of the research that we did was like, how can we change their medication? Can we increase their dosage? Can we like monitor them more? So that's the current research that we're doing, is seeing how do we actually address this now? Because we know that patients who are resistant to their therapy have a higher likelihood of dying, right? So that's kind of just a quick overview of how the thought process was for my master's project, right? So we see a patient, we notice something that's wrong with them, we do some investigation, and then we have to do some research studies to prove what we're trying to show, right? So this was my research study that I was able to prove that this is statistically significant. So if you see here, if you know what that means, it means that it's like not just by chance, we're actually seeing a trend here. Okay. So that's my research. Um, I just wanted to end off by giving you guys some like career advice. So some of you guys are quite early, but what I always tell students is like you guys have a thought of some of the jobs that you can do, right? Like people think about doctor, dentist, researcher, professor, right? But there's so many different jobs out there. And what I encourage you guys to do is literally just like look up jobs. Like go to Google and write jobs to do in research or jobs to do in academia or jobs to do in industry or pharmaceutical companies or things like that, and just read up on some of the jobs and like think about what they are and what they do and what you need to get those jobs, right? So kind of work backwards a little bit. Look at the jobs that you're really interested in and then find out what you need to do them, because there's so many interesting jobs that you can do, right? Like I'm working in industry and regulatory affairs, and I actually really, really love it. Like it's such a interesting job. It's so stimulating. And for it, there's like different things that you need, right? So I just have some like actual job titles that you guys can like look into in different fields, right? So if you're really interested in research, you can do things like research assistant. So we have, if I was a research assistant for this project, for example, you could be the one who is running that light transmission aggregometry, or you could be the one who's in the clinic recruiting people, recruiting patients with PAD and saying, oh, do you want to be in this study? If you're a clinical trial coordinator, like trials that they run, for example, for AstraZeneca, for these big clinical trials, for cancer trials, you could help be the lead of that. You could collect data on patients, or you could help recruit patients, things like that, right? So look into these jobs and see what sparks your interest. Don't put all of your eggs into medical school, because it is really, really, really tough to get into medical school, and not the reality is not everybody's going to get in, right? So always have a plan B. Other job titles in industry, for example, regulatory affairs associate. This is what I do, right? So I work in regulatory affairs. You can also be a clinical trial associate. So that's people running these big clinical trials for industry. You could be a medical science liaison. So this is a job where you are going to, MSL or a medical science liaison is the one who teaches physicians and doctors about new medications, right? So you're going to be the one who meets with doctors and says, we have this new therapy. We think it'll really help your patients. Let me educate you on it, right? So you're working directly with doctors. You can also be drug safety. So you can be monitoring what drugs are safe, what drugs aren't safe. You could do medical writing. Do you like writing, or do you like writing about science? You could be a medical writer where you write articles for patients, or you write pamphlets for doctors, or things like that, right? So there's a lot of stuff outside of being a medical physician where you can use your science and you're interested in science. And the last one, other jobs, you can do data AI. I do a lot of like data stuff. I do a lot of machine learning. You could be a biostatistician, genetic counselor. There's physician assistant. Um, There's a lot of like business work that you can do in science too. You can go to law school and do like patent law for science. So really just what I encourage you to do is like think about your interest, find jobs that are not in medicine, like not physician or like professional schools, and just look into them and see what you need, right? So like for a physician assistant, you need to go to PA school. For machine learning, you don't really need anything other than like maybe an undergrad in some computer science. For biostats, you should take stats in undergrad, right? So think about that and it'll help you prepare for your future a little better to open up things that you can do, right? So just don't think about MCAT. What do I need for the MCAT? Do I need psychology for MCAT? No. Can I add stats because I really like statistics as a elective, right? And maybe that can help me get into statistics if I don't get into med school. So that's what I really encourage people to do is really look for other jobs. My advice, if you do want med school, start research as early as you can. If you're in high school, in my lab, we have a high school student helping us. So like ask researchers, email researchers for help, for like shadowing opportunities in research, summer research. Aim for a 4.0. Genuinely, right now, especially in first and second year, your priority should be a 4.0. You don't need a 4.0, but like your goal should be 4.0 for med school because that's the most important thing. Okay. Uh, Look for alternative pathways, like I said, if your goal is medical school. If you're not interested in medical school, good for you. I appreciate that. But look at diverse career opportunities. Like I said, there's industry, there's policy, education, biotech, consulting, data science. There's so many things you could be doing and start to build your skills that are transferable. Okay. For my AstraZeneca, they asked me, they're like, I'm not in oncology, right? And I'm working in oncology now. They're like, you've never done oncology. Like, why do you think you would be beneficial in oncology? Well, actually, I did my PhD. I know how to learn quickly. I did undergrad at U of T where I learned a broad work of things, right? I'm a team. I know how to work on a team. I have leadership experience, right? And that's what I talked about. And they're like, okay, good, right? Network early. Create a LinkedIn right now, put all of your accomplishments on it. Whatever you do, put your information on LinkedIn and start reaching out to people. Just connect with different people. And if you're interested in a career and you see someone on LinkedIn that in that career, just send them a message and say, hey, I'm in high school, I'm in undergrad, but I'm really exploring medical science liaison. I would love to have a coffee chat with you, right? People are really open, especially on LinkedIn, to meet with people. I've had many people reach out to me and be like, can I have like a 15-minute coffee chat with you on Zoom? Of course, I'm happy to chat with you, right? So don't be shy to do that. And also look into internships, co-ops, volunteers. There's so much that you can do. And look up things that like excite you outside of medical school. Okay. And again, there's no right pathway. Okay. Don't worry about age. Don't stress about like, am I doing the right thing? Am I behind? Who cares? I'm 31 and I'm starting medical school. I don't give a shit, right? Like, I don't care. I don't care how old I am. I don't care if my students or if the other people in my class are 20, 21, 22, 23. I've gained so much more experience. I've like worked with patients. I've traveled. I've done so much advocacy. I had a fulfilling life up until 31. So like, I don't care. And if you went back to me, if I went to med school, back to undergrad, and someone said, if you go back to undergrad and right now I'll get you into medical school right out of undergrad, I would never go back. Like I would say, no, I love the experience that I've had. Yeah, I'm older, but I've gained so much and like it's helped me so much that now I'm going to be an even better physician. So no, I don't want to go back. I'm happy where I am, right? So don't stress about time. Um, don't let other people pressure you, and also don't never compare yourself with other people. Okay, never compare yourself with other people because there's always going to be someone who's worse than you and there's always going to be someone who's better than you. Okay, I have so many accomplishments, but you could say, yeah, but you're 31. Okay, right? Or you could say, oh, there's somebody who finished their PhD at 20. Oh, okay, whatever, right? Like I could compare myself with a lot of people, but you should never do that because you're on your own journey. Nothing is the correct way in life. Everybody's living their life for the first time. Just make sure that you are doing things that you like so that you are happy and you have like internal validation and try new things. Okay. That's it. That's all I have for you guys. Happy to answer any questions or
Awesome. Okay, yes. First, I would really like if everyone could give Dr. Khan a virtual round of applause on Zoom. You're getting a lot of nice messages in the chat as well if you have any time to read them and some thank yous from people. Thank you so much for sharing your journey into medicine and everything you've done up until then. It's very inspirational. And I just want to let everyone know our session officially ends at 11:30, so you have to go. There's no pressure to stay. Hamza, how long are you able to stay today for? And no worries if it's not super long.
As long I have to start work at 1, so I have lots of
Okay,
time.
perfect. So, yes, if you have a question you want to ask Dr. Khan, you're more than welcome to. If not, you can head out right at 11:30. That's totally fine. We won't keep you here, but if you want to talk to him face to face, we want to give you that opportunity. I'm sure you can see there are lots of questions pouring in already. So, I'll just get started with people that have their hands raised and they can ask their questions if that sounds good. Awesome. Okay, so Lucas, I think you have your hand up first.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Khan. Very nice of you to share your experience with us, so thank you for that. I just wanted to ask, this isn't so much geared to like admissions or anything. I was just curious what like recent development in cardiology or like cardiovascular medicine are you like genuinely most excited about?
That's such a good question. Um, it's you guys have probably heard so much about like semaglutide, and what's the like generic name for it? I forget of semaglutide. Like the drug that you take for weight loss. I know it as semaglutide, but Ozempic. There you go. Yes, Ozempic. It's like a huge, it's like literally a miracle drug for everything. It's actually insane. So patients with peripheral arterial disease, the plaque that builds in the arteries of your legs, there's never been anything that reverses that plaque. So once you have that plaque, that's it. The only thing you can do is get surgery to remove it. But Dr. Verma just released a study. He's from St. Mike's too, who did us research on semaglutide, and it showed that patients who are on semaglutide actually have reversal of peripheral plaque, which is actually like mind-boggling to me, because we have no clue how that's happening. We have no idea. Nobody knows. They did like they were doing clinical studies on diabetics with PAD for something else, and they just coincidentally found that the patients who were on Ozempic had reversal of that plaque, which is a huge thing. Like if you can reverse atherosclerotic plaque, like wow, that's amazing. No clue how it's happening. That's going to be the future of research. Maybe one of you guys can do that project. But that's actually super exciting to me, and it's so cool. I wish I was in like Ozempic research because I think it's so cool, but I'm not, unfortunately. But yeah, good question. That's a huge, exciting future for sure.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, our next question is from Yuk.
Hello. I just wanted to say first that the case study was really interesting and amazing to just hear about. So coming on to my main question, I was kind of interested to see your work with applying machine learning and biomarker research, and that's kind of what I'm mainly interested in as a career path. I work with deep learning models and EEG signal analysis, if you know what that is. So what my main question was is that has working with AI changed the way you think about research, or is it just another tool that you like using in the process?
Yeah, good question. So my research like now is very like machine learning, biomarker stuff, but it's so boring to be honest. Like I love this. The thing I presented is very like clinical and translational, and it's like easy to understand and see how like the connection with medicine. The biomarker stuff, not to say that it's boring, your work or anything, but like I think it's just less like stimulating in my opinion. But yeah, AI is changing the game for sure. So the research that I do, um now is like, can we use blood? So what we do is we take patient blood and we run a couple like protein tests on it, and then we'll input that into a machine learning model, and we'll also add in their like their height, their weight, their gender, their sex, their past medical history, things like that. And then it can tell us a more like holistic picture of the risk of them having a heart attack, stroke, or death, right? So we do a lot of like prognostics or like understanding the future of a patient. And that is where like machine learning has been so great, because you can't like seeing trends is really hard if you're using like basic statistics, especially when you have so many variables, right? So if we have blood markers and past medical history and like characteristics and things like that, it's hard to get trends to come out of it. statistically, but with machine learning, it can like find trends that like are super like unique to certain things. So that's why I think machine learning is so great for especially what I do for like prediction modeling and prognosis. Is definitely the future. So it's good that you're in that field. I think it's definitely moving that way. And it helps us in vascular too to like to predict like who should get surgery, who shouldn't, who's at risk, whose medication should we change, things like that, that you can't really do with like basic statistical modeling. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, that did. Thank you.
No, no worries.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have Manuel next.
Hey, hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I thought it was very informative. I was just wondering, like, to get into your undergrad at U of T, because I'm trying to aim for the same pathway as you. Not like the exact same, but trying to get into U of T. I was just wondering,
Nice.
like, what was the most important into getting in? Like, was your grades into getting into your undergraduate, was it like, did they need to be super high or?
So honestly, for U of T, what I've seen, it depends a lot on your high school. So like for example, and for me, I got acceptance purely based off of my grade 11 marks. So like my grade 11 marks were, so my grade 11 average I think was like 93, and then my grade 12 average dropped to 86. But I got like accepted to U of T off of my undergrad marks, and then I just had to like maintain my grade 12 marks, which I did. But I think it really depends on your undergrad, sorry, your high school, because I went to like quite a good, it was a public school. I did a quite a good public school here in Toronto, and it's are like 80% of our students or like 90% of the high school students went to U of T. So it was like a very like U of T school. I don't know why, but I know people who had like 65 averages and got into life science. And then I had friends who were like in Mark Garneau, for example, which is like a school where like some of my friends used to go, and people with like 90 averages got into like U of T Scarborough and not St. George. So as like horrible as that is, I think it's like very like school, the reputation of your school. But I think if you want to be like sure, aim for like a 90 in grade 11, and then try and maintain that through through grade 12. Also, I did high school in like 2009, from 2009 to 2012 or whatever. So like I'm old, and COVID really changed things because I think grade inflation was a huge thing, and like even just grade inflation generally is a big thing. So like what the competition is now for undergrad, like I'm not too sure. But I feel like if you aim for a 90 or above, I think you should be okay. But try to do like extracurriculars too. Like I was on a couple of sports teams. I was in a bunch of clubs, which I think helped me. And I got to know get to know teachers, right? Like a big thing is like a lot of students don't. When I was in high school, like I tried to make my teachers like friends of mine. Like go talk to them after class and like be nice to them, right? Like they're there to help you and they'll write you references and stuff. So like talk to them after class if you have issues, like just speak to them. Like some of my teachers, like genuinely, I loved so much. Like I would just go talk to them about like random stuff after class. So like that's another tip is like get to know your teachers, do extracurriculars, do as many extracurriculars as you can, like that you can fit in your schedule and aim for that 90.
Awesome. Thank
Very
you.
much.
Awesome. Okay, our next question is from Hannah.
Hi, it's really nice meeting you. First of all, I just want to say I really enjoyed your presentation. It was really, really interesting. And I really like how you broke down like your entire research experience and you made it like really understandable. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
I think my main question is, obviously, you explained how you have a lot of experience in research and like working in labs and things like that. So for students who don't really, who haven't really engaged in formal research yet, like what tips do you have for them in like doing like in like working in a lab as like a high school student doing research, not just in terms of like reaching out, to a bunch of, labs nearby, but when you're like actually in the lab, like what tips do you have for them?
Good question. Just to note, I didn't do any research even in undergrad. Like I had no research up until like I graduated from my undergrad. So like
Mm.
don't think that you're behind, first of all.
Okay.
But like it's good that you're thinking about this now because it's good to be proactive. My
Mm.
biggest like it's all about networking. Like genuinely, it's about networking. The one high school student who's in my lab, like I met her somewhere like some like networking event or something, and then like I needed a student, and she had reached out to me at like the perfect time where I was like, okay, I need somebody. And she was, and it's like you're not as a high school student, it's going to be extremely hard, like very, 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 very hard to get research experience unless you're like a nepo or like somebody through a network. Um, it's really hard. It's easier once you're like in undergrad because you're in an undergrad program. So if you can't find one now and you're in high school, I wouldn't like stress about it, but like try, right? So like try do good in your science courses, show interest in like research and genuinely it's just like networking and emailing people, right? So like look up if you go to different hospital websites. So just say I work at St. Michael's Hospital, right? So you can go to Google and write St. Michael's Hospital researchers and a list of all the researchers at St. Mike's comes up, just click on their profiles and read them, right? Like read one of the papers or read their background. They have emails right there. Every person has an email contact and just like cold email them and be like, hey, I'm Hannah. I'm a high school student. I'm really interested in your research and I like we learned about it in my biology class and I'm interested in pursuing science or a research career. Like, can I have a chat with you? Can I have a coffee chat? And then during that coffee chat, just be like, I'm really interested. I'd love to come help you in your lab, blah, 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 stuff like that. It can be hard to do, but that's what you got to do, right? It's like networking and finding people
Yeah.
um, that will take you on. And like I said, when I was applying, I emailed 60 people and only one person responded, right? So
Mm.
you gotta like bite the bullet and just email as many people as you can.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Awesome. Our next question is from Scarlett.
Hi, good to see you, and thanks for your time. I was just wondering, because you've completed all of those like programs like master's, PhD, undergrad, and you're starting your med school, what are some advice you have regarding preparing for interviews or supplementary applications, like such as short response essays or personal profiles when you're applying to those like jobs or programs in this field?
For interviewing, like AI. I had like for my PhD and like I have to do you have to do like presentations and like question and answer periods and things like that where they like grill you on your thing for my med school interviews for like AstraZeneca interviews. What I would do is like ChatGPT has like a talk chat feature. I would put all of the information. So like for my PhD, for example, or like med school, for example, a med school interview. I was like, I got an interview at TMU Medicine. I want you to look up the program, look up their values. This is my CV. This is the like can med role, like all the med roles, blah blah blah. Like ask me a question that would typically come on a medical school interview. I'm gonna provide you a response and I want you to evaluate it and use my response to give me a like an excellent med school response. So then it would ask me a question, I would talk to it, and then it would say, you said this really well, you said this really well. This is how I would structure your answer, and it will give you your answer as an excellent example. Right. So like I use that a lot for a lot of my interviews because it helps you like chat, like talk and like practice the way you would answer, and then it gives you your answer back in a better way. Right. So like if I'm looking up questions and someone else is answering, it's not going to be specific for me, right? But the good thing about AI is I can give it what I want to say and it can give me a better answer of what I actually said, right? So that's a good way. And another like for me, I'm quite involved with my department. So like I was like leadership and stuff like that. And that helped me build communication skills just like naturally doing those things, right? So despite like practicing, just getting involved, doing leadership things, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to help you build that like ability to public speak, right? Like in high school, genuinely, like I was so shy and quiet and like I didn't do anything in high school. I would like go home and play on a computer all night and like whatever. So just you guys being in things like this, asking questions, you're like building your skills and preparing yourself. So just keep doing things like this, keep going to networking events, keep like doing leadership things. When you have a chance to present, take it. If you have a chance to like talk to people, take it because those like soft skills and transferable skills are also going to really, really help you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Our next question is from Young Jun.
Hello, thank you so much for your time today. So, how do you decide on a research question that is worth spending years pursuing? Or would you suggest choosing one specific research question to research for a long time, or doing many research in the same amount of time?
Good question. So in undergrad, I never sat down and was like, let me come up with a research question, right? Because for research, you need to have money to be able to do any of your research, right? And as an undergrad, you're not going to get any money to do research, right? So where you usually start is like think about a topic that you like, right? So in undergrad, I did a lot of cardiovascular courses, so I loved cardiovascular. So I started with that. Let me find a researcher who does cardiovascular research, right? I emailed a bunch of cardiovascular people and I ended up getting a response from my supervisor who was in vascular surgery, right? Then I work with him. So I sat down with him and he like these researchers are gonna know more than us, right? Because they spend their lives doing this kind of stuff. So you usually work with your supervisor to come up with research questions, right? So like this thing where we saw the patient and stuff, like this just didn't come naturally. It was kind of a process where we are like, okay, we usually see this with patients. Let's see if we can find anybody like this. We've talked about like medication personalization. Like my PI really wanted that, so that's why I started thinking, okay, how can we personalize medication? How can we relate this to like antiplatelets or blood thinners? How can we relate this to vascular patients, right? So it's a lot of like working with the supervisor that you find for your research to come up with a question, right? Because he's a surgeon, he worked with patients, so he knows like what the issues are, right? Like he knows what the problems are. So it's easier to work with somebody like that to come up with a question rather than just be like, let me just sit right now and think of a question and come up with that. Um, yeah, and but sometimes what people do is like if you have a supervisor that you're interested in and you want to meet with them because you have a question, you can like read their papers, read literature in the current field. And one part, usually in like research papers, there's like a next steps or like future studies blurb or something, right? That would say what the next steps of the research are, what are future questions that we can ask, right? So for the Ozempic example or the semaglutide example, the next step is like, what is the mechanism that Ozempic uses to reduce atherosclerotic burden on the arteries, right? So if I wanted to pursue that, I could email the professor who's doing that and be like, hey, like I am really interested in this question. And I can look up ways that we could potentially pursue that. And I can say, this is what I want to do. This is the research question. Like, are you interested in doing this with me? And if they say yes, then I can sit down and we can like grill out a proper hypothesis and a proper research plan with that person, right? And then also your the like final question is like, do you want to stick with one question? Do you want to stick with multiple questions? It's just really going to depend on is going to really depend on like the research and what you're interested in, right? Like for my specific research, there was three questions that I wanted to come up with. I only presented the one to you, which was like, is it prevalent and does it affect patients? But then like there's other questions too, right? Like, okay, it is relevant, but can we do anything about it? Can we personalize medication? That was another question. And then can we find point of care tests? So like, is there something that we can use quickly to do this, right? So like it depends on your project and how big you want your project to be. Is it a master's project? Is it a PhD project? Is it like a big research grant? That'll also like dictate how big of a question it is. For masters, it's usually like do one or two questions and try to answer those questions, right? For PhD, it's usually like three or four questions. If you're doing a big grant, it could be like multiple questions. So it just kind of depends, right?
Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Our next question is from Dongha.
Hello, Dr. Khan. So I really enjoyed listening to your case study and research, in particular, like how you assess platelet functions using the light transmission aggregometry technique. So I was wondering whether there are any limitations to this technique, and if there are, like how you would account for them to ensure that the results are reliable.
Yeah, good question. Um, this lecture I do to undergrads, and we actually talk about that a lot. But I kept it out for this, but you guys are really smart, so good job, good question. Um, yeah, so light transmission aggregometry, it's very expensive. So it takes a lot of money to run one sample. You have to have a trained personnel to do it, right? It took me a long time to like figure out how to do it properly. So you have to pay that person to do it. You have to buy the machine. Um, you have to do it in like a specific research lab. You need all the supplies to do it. It can be very, very expensive. And it also takes 2 hours to run, right? So like if I'm trying to test a bunch of people, 2 hours is too long, right? Some doctor might be like, I'm not going to wait 2 hours to see if the patient is responding to aspirin. I don't care, right? So that's what we found. We found that that was too long. So part of my master's project, this was actually published too. If you're interested, you can probably find it in my profile. But like we worked with a pharmaceutical company called Helena Laboratories, and they have uh, a blood test, like a platelet testing machine that you just put the blood in, and it'll tell you how active the platelets are. Right. So we collaborated with that company, and it can do it in 2 minutes. And part of my research was like using that machine to see how we can diagnose aspirin resistance. And that paper I published that we were able to diagnose aspirin resistance in 2 minutes. And that could be done in a family clinic. Like you didn't need any training. It was just you take the patient's blood and you put it into the machine and it tells you like if the patient's resistant or not. So that was part of the project. So that's where previously I said point of care testing. That's what's really important when you're like giving patients medication because usually it's like a family physician who is doing that, right? Usually a family physician is the one who's doing like giving medication, testing medication if they're working, things like that. So I don't want the patient to have to come to a hospital to do it. I want something where I can do it at a family clinic. So that little machine was something that we found that could easily be done in a family clinic. So that is like the future of that is like finding things that are quick and easy and cheap to do versus like having to do LTA, which is super expensive, has to be done in a hospital, has to have like people to do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Our next question is from Suyeon.
Hi, thank you for that. It was really helpful how you broke down the biological mechanism so clearly. And I want to know that what's something you wish you had prioritized to do more during undergraduate or med school, something that felt less urgent at the time but turned out to matter a lot after graduation.
Good question. Um, there's like a bunch, I think. But like generally when I say like I have no like qualms with my past. Like I would never go back because I think I just like everything's a learning experience. But if I was to go back to undergrad, I think like there's a few things I would do differently. One, I would start research earlier, right? Like I would not like I would always be like, I hate research. I hate research. I didn't even know what research was. I had never done research and I was like, I hate it. And then I didn't do it. So I wish I had started a little bit earlier, like started looking into research earlier. Um, tried to volunteer in a research lab. That's one thing. Um, and two is like make connections with people, right? Like when I was in undergrad, I was like so focused on like courses and studying, and then like I also had to work a lot, so I did a lot of jobs. But like I wish I kind of like networked with other students, like made more friends and like connected with people more because something in my master's and my PhD, like I'm very involved and I got to know so many people. I've made so many friends. Like I've met incredible people. Oh my God, my supervisor is calling me right now. I'm not gonna answer. Anyways, but yeah, so like that's another thing, right? It's like making connections with people. One, not only like makes the experience a lot better because you're like coming out with friends and you're going it through it with people who like are similar to you and like have similar experiences, but you meet so many people, right? Like I met so many incredible people like Davina, for example, through my grad degree, who are like people who are so smart and will do such incredible things in the future. And like you have friends and you're friends with them, but you also have such a big network, right? Like I have friends who are doing so many different things, right? I have like consultant and law and like non-for-profit things like that, right? So like just like networking with people and like making more friends and things like that is something also that I would like prioritize, I think, if I went to undergrad again.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Viswa.
Hello. Thank you for showing your research. So, on the program itinerary, it said that you had a PhD in vascular medicine and biomarker research. So, like, given your research on like biomarkers in vascular disease, which biomarker do you think like holds the most promise for early detection of vascular pathology before like your symptoms appear?
Good
And what's
question.
kept it from wider clinical adoption so far since, yeah.
Yeah, good question. Um, so the vascular, like I had mentioned in the lecture, vascular disease is such like a wide range of diseases, right? So like for my research, my PhD was split into like biomarkers for three different diseases. So peripheral arterial disease was one of them. We also did like carotid artery stenosis, which is like atherosclerosis in the carotid artery. And then we did abdominal aortic aneurysm, which is like when there's like ballooning of the artery of the aorta. So like biomarkers specific for me specifically, like for my research, we were pushing that like you need to do like disease specific biomarkers. So like every disease has a different biomarker, I think. But that's why we really integrated machine learning, because like each disease is so specific that machine learning can like detect each thing for you and then give you a whole report of everything, right? So like that's why my PhD was like, what are markers for PAD? What are markers for aneurysms? What are markers for carotid artery stenosis? Because a lot of the patients we see in vascular surgery have like all of those or like multiple different diseases. So like there's not one marker that will be good for all of those diseases, right? Because it's just you have to be more specific if you want accurate diagnosis and like prognosis. So that's why I like machine learning, because we can integrate everything into one, and it'll use those like specifics for each disease. But I can talk about maybe peripheral arterial disease, and that's what we've done. I think a really good one, it's gonna get complicated a little bit. I don't know if you guys like, maybe you guys will understand, but so there's something called like vascular endothelial growth factor. It's called VEGF. You might have heard of it. And what it does is it's released in hypoxia, and it helps to create new blood vessels, right? It's like a very well-known protein. And in patients with vascular disease, we originally thought like, let's give patients who have PAD VEGF, right? So that they can create new blood vessels so that it can bypass the artery. But my research actually showed that when like patients with PAD already have elevated VEGF because they're trying to compensate um, by releasing VEGF, but it's not functioning properly. And their high VEGF actually increases the risk of heart attacks and strokes, right? So like giving a patient just because VEGF gives like new arteries doesn't mean that it's like a good thing to do, right? Because these patients already have that mechanism in their body and it's clearly not working, right? So what we're moving towards is like the VEGF is released by like all arteries, and it's released by like different cell types. It's released by so many different things. So what we're moving on to is something called extracellular vesicles. So extracellular vesicles are vesicles that are released from cells specifically, and you can detect exactly where an extracellular vesicle is coming from or an EV, right? So what we're looking at, and if I was like, I don't know if I'll continue with this specific research, but if I was continue, I would look into, rather than just a protein, I would look at vesicles. So where are vesicles? Like what is the vesicles that are coming from diseased muscles of patients with PAD, right? Because that's where the pain is, that's where the blood is not coming. So vesicles that are coming from these diseases, what proteins do they have? Is it VEGF? And can we target that VEGF to either increase or decrease, right? Because like the disease response is usually vesicle release, right? So if we can determine what vesicles are released and what proteins those specific vesicles have, um, then I think we can do better like specific diagnostic and prognostic in patients, because we're going directly to like the specific tissue that is affected, right? Rather than like plasma proteins, because plasma is like floating through, is going to touch like every organ probably eventually, right? So like it could be coming from many places. So to be more specific, I would look into extracellular vesicles coming from ischemic skeletal muscle. Yeah, I hope that made sense.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Our next question is from Sahar.
Hi, thank you so much for your time. It's really interesting to learn about your research and your medical journey. I would like to ask, what area of cardiovascular research do you think still needs to be studied based off the research you've done so far?
Yeah, good question. So The interesting thing between when we think of like cardiovascular is split into cardiac and vascular, right? Cardiac research is heart and the ascending aorta, and then vascular research is everything else, right? Minus the brain, because neurovascular is something different. But vascular itself, everything is under researched, like everything. Because people, when you think about cardiovascular disease, the first thing people think about is heart attack or stroke, right? Because if you have a heart attack, you die. You can die right away. If you have a stroke, you can die right away. But patients with PAD, for example, it can be over 25 years, right? So a patient can have PAD for 25 years. It can be debilitating, but they're still alive. And sometimes for physicians, that's good enough. They're like, you're alive. That's all I care about, right? Which is not a good thing. So that's why, like, funding for vascular research is a lot less and less prioritized than stroke and heart, right? So we're talking about aspirin resistance in patients with PAD. There's already established aspirin resistance in cardiac patients. There's already a mechanism to detect it, and they already have like medication that you can give patients who are resistant to aspirin in cardiac patients. But remember, I said diseases are very specific for where they come from. So just because a patient with a cardiac disease, I can't give that to patients with PAD. It's not going to help them because the heart is a totally different artery than the peripheral arteries. I mean, totally different organ than the peripheral arteries, right? So, like, I can say, oh, heart patients have this for aspirin resistance. Nobody cares. It's not going to work for them because it's a different disease, right? So, like, why has it already been established for patients with heart attacks and strokes and stuff, but no one cares about patients with PAD, right? So in to answer your question, I think everything for vascular is underfunded. So like that's why it takes so much time for us to get funding for things that we want to do in vascular because these chronic diseases doctors don't care about, right? And I think medicine, this is such a like common thing, but like medicine should be preventative and not reactive, right? But it's very reactive at the moment. And vascular pathologies are very like we need to prevent things before they get really terrible. Um, so that's what I think. I think vascular just generally is underfunded. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Neo.
Hey, Dr. Khan. I really enjoyed listening to your lecture, and I really enjoyed listening to your journey as well. And I wanted to ask, what research questions do you think how do you decide which research questions are worth pursuing? Because I noticed you put an emphasis on how you formulate these research questions and how it's really important to incorporate what you like. So I wanted to know how you know which ones you should actually pursue, and if you do pursue it and you don't think it's worth it, how do you know when you should abandon it?
Nice, interesting. This might be people might think differently, but in my opinion, I don't think there's like any bad research question or like any question that you shouldn't pursue because that's science. Science is like learning new things. But it also like I think it really depends on what like field you're in and how much money you have. Because sometimes like research fully it like depends on money, right? So I'll give you an example of this excuse me, of this exact project that I talked about here, right? So we medicine is all about making money. As sad as that is, that's what medicine is. The overall goal of the medical field is like, how do I make money? Okay, even AstraZeneca, we find like a life-saving drug and it's great, but their priority is how do we get it to the market? And they'll say, like AstraZeneca will say, how do I get this to the market as soon as possible so that the patients can have access to it, right? But their internal goal is to make money. Their goal is how early can we get this to market so that I can make money, right? That's the reality. That's how medicine is. So a lot of questions end up coming down to how much money you have or how much money can I save based off what I'm currently doing, right? So this aspirin resistant question. First of all, we started with LTA, way too expensive. No one's going to care. So I knew I needed to pivot away from LTA because it's not going to work, right? It's too expensive. Then we found that machine that I talked about before, which is like more point of care. It was a lot cheaper. It was a lot quicker, which is great. Then next stop for research is you have to, in order to convince a physician, like I was saying, like 150 patients is even not enough. You need to do like every hospital in Toronto, hospitals across Canada. If you have hospitals across Canada and you see the same thing, then you're going to say, okay, yes, we can implement this, right? So the next step of my thing would be like across Canada, does aspirin resistance work? This machine, does it actually detect patients? Yes or no? Okay. Does it good? Is that good enough for it to be implemented? No. What's the next question? How much money are doctors going to save? How much money is the healthcare going to save with this product? So if I can diagnose patients early with aspirin resistance, how much money does that save me rather than treating a patient for a heart attack? If it's easier and cheaper to treat a patient for a heart attack than to diagnose them with aspirin resistance and treat them with aspirin resistance, we don't care about this. We want to just treat the patient with heart attack, and your research will go into the garbage, right? So like that's one of the things. Like if your research dies because it can't make money, then it dies. This is for medicine specifically, by the way, like because my research is very like in medicine for physicians. But if you're in like labs who do like a lot of labs do like research just for passion, right? Like they get a research grant and you have the money to pursue something random, you can do that, right? So it just depends a lot on the lab. My lab is very like I need to make sure that physicians are interested in what I'm doing. Physicians are only interested if it helps their patients, but the system is only interested if it makes money or saves money for the healthcare system. So my research is dying. This specific project is dying now because we don't have the money to do a cross Canada study. So it's at a standstill. Like I'm showing people that like people are dying because of this, but we don't have the money to continue, so it kind of just dies. Did that
Thank you
answer
so
all your
much. Yeah,
did
that
that
answered
answer all your
everything.
questions?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Yeah. So the point is go to a rich lab that has lots of money. So you can get all of your questions answered.
Okay, our next question is from Matthew.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting. So do you have like any recommendations of like certain extracurriculars or like any like shadowing opportunities in school or out of school clubs, like specifically for people who want to like pursue medical school? And if you
Are
have
you,
any, oh, and if you
no,
have
go
any,
ahead.
if you do any by yourself, which ones did you do?
Are you in high school or undergrad?
Yeah, high school.
High school? Okay. Um, extracurriculars, generally any like things you're doing now, honestly, probably won't matter for your medical application because you should do things in like undergrad, like third, fourth, second year is like your chunk of time that those are the things that are really going to be impactful for your medical application. So for me, I would say your priority should be like aiming for like getting good grades to get into university, right? But if you want to do something like find something now that you can keep long term, right? Like if you join like I was like MVP of the track team in high school. That was not on my medical application, right? Like at all. Even when I applied out undergrad, because I had so many other things in like grad in undergrad that I did that like were better, right? And more relevant and maybe more thing. Um, but anything that you do now, like if it's long term that you can carry through undergrad, then I would do things like that, right? Like if you play soccer on a league or something that you've been doing for a long time, that's good, right? If you're doing like if you're thinking about med school, right? So like that kind of stuff. If you're doing like extracurriculars outside of high school that you've involved in with a long time with like a charity, that's good. Hospital volunteering, that's really good. So those kind of things I would prioritize because you guys are so early. Like high school is super, super early. Um, so like if anything on your med school application, maybe there will be like one or two things from high school that you did, right? So like think about like big things, long-term things, that are kind of like that can continue on for like a longer period of time and potentially into undergrad because then those look better for applications, right? So like I in high school, I think one thing that did come from my high school was um, I was like chosen to do a like international like exchange to Japan. Like the Japanese government chose some students from Canada to do whatever. So like that was one thing that I think was like super impactful. That was on my med school application in undergrad. Um, and I think that was it. But I did like I was on like I was on a bunch of sports teams. I was MVP of like track team. I did like the mathletes or whatever. Like I did such random things in high school, but like none of that really made it to my med school application because it's so far away. And you're gonna do like research, and then you should join clubs in undergrad. You should like be presidents of club if you can. You should do hospital volunteering in undergrad. So that kind of stuff is more important. Um, and that's gonna be for undergrad, but like for now, like just being involved with leadership, being involved with sports and doing extracurricular stuff will prepare you for doing that in undergrad. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Our next question is from Hannah.
Hi, I just had a quick question about why, were you always planning to go back to medical school, or did you just have an epiphany, I want to go back and get like a
Yeah.
degree or something?
You know what's so funny? I don't even know if I want to go back to med school. And I accepted my offer. And I'm going, but I don't know if it's the right thing. But so I in undergrad, like I've always wanted to be a physician, always, like since undergrad. Just because I'm a leader, I like I'm confident in my decision making. I like working with patients. I like helping people like better their lives, things like that. And I like want to make a change in the healthcare system. That's what I thought about why I wanted to be a doctor in undergrad. But I got all of that through research. I got all of that through working with AstraZeneca. I was able to be a leader. I was able to like get paid really well. I was able to do things that I love, right? So like all of those things that I thought that I wanted because like I wanted to be a doctor for, I was able to find those things in other things, right? So the question is, why am I going back to med school? I applied this year because my MCAT was expiring. So I was like, let me just try. Um, and I got in. And currently, like my goal, I didn't think I was going to get into med school. And I was like, I love working with AstraZeneca because I can be leader. I'm changing patients' lives by working, finding new drugs. I like can make money. I can work my way up. It's a good long-term job, whatever, like stability, things like that. So a lot of that I had through research and working with AstraZeneca. But then I got in, and then I was thinking like I can, as a physician, because genuinely, if I didn't have a PhD, I wouldn't go to med school for sure because I think like I love research because I can like change the way that we do things, make things better. And as only a peer MD, you need to follow the rules. You can't make changes. You can't like that's not allowed. If you do things that are not written in your like guidebook of guidelines, you're gonna get in trouble. But as a PhD and an MD, I can do that, but also say, hey, I'm gonna do research because this doesn't work for me, right? I'm seeing this trend in patients. I can't change my patient work, but I'm going to advocate for that and do research on it, right? So that's why I think now going to MD is okay for me because I can like kind of combine both help people, change lives, do that I could do from AstraZeneca, but I can do that as an MD PhD. For me, an MD only was is way too restrictive that I wouldn't do that. But because I have a PhD now, that's why I think it's like it's an okay move. Uh, Currently. But like AstraZeneca has been really great, but I can't like I'm also doing research there and I'm changing the way we do things or whatever. But I have because it's more businessy, I have a little bit less like power to do what I want. So I think an MD PhD as like a clinician scientist, it like opens up that like my ability to do things that I might be more interested in. Yeah. But is that the right choice? I don't know, right? Like I said, I'm 30 and I have no clue what I'm doing. Let's see. Let's hope so. And if not, whatever, right? Like, yeah, I like teaching. I have a PhD. I can go into like lecturing. I could do professorship. I can have students, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's see what happens.
Okay, great. Our next question, I'm going to go to Lauren.
Hi, thank you for taking your time to be here. I was just wondering if you had any advice for choosing your major for undergrad. I'm currently going to be a senior in high school and I'm interested in biophysics, but I eventually want to go into med school, and I'm kind of wondering if that would be the right choice to help me get there.
It makes absolutely no difference. Pursue what you like. Yeah. I
Thank
have
you.
somebody in TMU is okay, maybe it will make a difference, but I'll answer why. So someone at TMU who's coming with me, he did criminology in undergrad and he was going to pursue law school, randomly applied for med school, got in and is coming to med school, right? He's in criminology and political science, absolutely no relevance, right? The only thing that it might help you maybe is like some of the course, like if you do physiology, for example, maybe you'll understand the MCAT a little bit better, but like you can study for that. Like you can do music and then study for the MCAT and do really well on the MCAT. So like the only thing that it might help you with is like doing better on the MCAT, but like who cares about that? Do what you want, do what you like, and also take your prerequisites. Like look into the med school that you want to get to, take those prerequisites, but do whatever you like. You need to aim for a big GPA. The two my like other friends from TMU, one thing that I would say different than what they said is like they said take bird courses, but you have to be careful because like I was on the admissions committee for PhD and MSc in my department, and if you're taking a lot of bird courses, it's obvious. We can tell. And that like reflects negatively on you. So like if you're taking bird courses, like take stuff that is like relevant at least a little bit or something to like like if you're taking like biophysics or whatever, like don't take like an easy like linguistics class just because it's easy, right? Like take something that makes sense and is relevant because they will look at that, right? But if you want to do med school, I would try and stay within like science, right? It's like anything within science, bio. I think you said biophysics, like that's interesting and cool, right? So relevant to medicine. So pursue that if you like it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome. Our next question is from Ferris.
Good morning, Dr. Khan. Um, First, I just want to say I really like your hair. I feel like it contrasts like really nicely.
You know
Um,
what's so funny? I'm gonna interrupt you. I'm like
mhm.
I'm going pure white. So like it might be a bit
Really?
yellow, but I have to like bleach it multiple times and my scalp is like dying. So yeah.
Wait, that's cool. That's cool. I like that.
Thanks. I
But
appreciate that.
I have a few questions. Feel free to like spitfire here. As someone with a myriad of publications as yourself, what finding did you observe gain the most traction amongst the networking world of the medical field?
Good question. Someone actually posted my paper in the chat, which I appreciate. That's the most cited paper in my whole lab, which is
Really?
like so,
Wait,
yeah. It's like just it's a review that I wrote on aspirin resistance, and it's by far like I think it has like 60 citations.
oh wow, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, so like 60 researchers across the globe have said like this research is interesting, right? Which is like so cool. And it's just like I wrote that really quickly. Like it was just a quick review of like what is asthma resistance? What are the current like treatment things? But good question. That's a big one, which I didn't expect. Like I do a lot of machine learning AI stuff now that gets cited a lot less than that paper. Like to this day.
That's
And
nice.
I think that was published, I think, in like 2020 or 2021 until this day. I think this morning it got cited actually.
Really?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
it's always just current and it's always just gaining new stuff?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. See, like I get emails that say like someone cited you can't read it, but it literally says Hamza, someone like a researcher cited
Someone
your
like
paper.
cited.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can click and see
That's
like who cited it and what they said. It's really interesting.
that's so cool. And do you ever
Yeah.
like reach out back to them and be like, "Oh, like thank you."
No, I've had people reach out to me and be like, "Oh, we're really interested in this," and like you read like message them, but I've never done that. But you could if you wanted to. It's a good way to
And then
network.
next question. Additionally, have you ever thought about establishing your own company or organization with your assumed significance from your discovery on atherosclerosis?
So I'm not like I'm in AstraZeneca, but I'm not like, very like business savvy.
Hmm.
But my supervisor is. So like a lot of the stuff that like we do, he patents because he's like he wants to go into business.
Yeah.
So like some of the markers, for example, like he'll find a plasma marker and we won't publish it and he'll just submit a patent for it. So that he can like if it works out, then he can have like all the money for it. So you can do that. I'm just not interested in that. Genuinely, like I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't care about making money. I'm a person who like I can survive off of like 60,000 a year. That's more than
That's
enough for me. So
yeah,
like
that's good. That's good.
I don't that care that much about making money. I'm genuinely like I like mentoring people. I like helping students like you guys. I like changing patients' lives and stuff like that. So that's more what I care about. But there is a big business behind this stuff. So like if that's what you're interested in, and interested in making money, you can make a lot of money with the research that you do. I have a friend who discovered a like organ transplant, like a method to transplant organs, and now he's the CEO of a huge company across Canada and across the US. And that was his PhD research that turned into that big company. So it's possible. if that's what you're interested
And then two more questions. I'm so sorry. What are some personal hobbies? I don't think anybody asked that yet.
in.
Like
One,
outside of like work.
yeah, one cliche is I love to travel. Like I'll waste all of my money on traveling. And then I also like paint. I like to longboard. Like I grew up in the beaches of
Mhm.
Toronto. So like my childhood is all just like being on the beach, and like longboarding down the on the boardwalk. So I paint my own longboards. Like I have like custom longboards that I've painted. So I like to, because I'm a very creative person. So the Pueblo Science, the like charity that I work with, I come up with new science experiments for them. So I like use my creativity for like science for that. But then I also like paint my own like custom longboards too, which I like to do.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah,
Like, so is it like very detailed as well?
yeah. I don't know if I have a picture. Yeah, so like I love ancient Egyptian history. So like one of them is like a full like it's like hieroglyphs and like the Egyptian gods and stuff like
Wait, are
that.
you
Yeah, it's pretty
serious?
cool.
I'm
I don't know if it's
Egyptian.
here. It's right there. I don't know if I can show you or not. Oh, you're Egyptian? No way. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wait, can I show
And
you?
then
I'm actually so proud of it.
wait,
Give me
yeah,
one
of course, of
second.
course. Sorry to get off track, anybody.
I
I'm
know.
so
Sorry,
sorry.
guys. This is it. Like it's King
Oh
Tut, and
wow.
then
That's
the like
so
Egyptian
cool.
gods Osiris and
Can I
Anubis,
take a
and
picture
yeah,
if that's okay?
sure, sure,
That's so cool. Okay, thank you. I'm
yeah,
gonna show my
yeah.
parents
So
that.
that's an example, right? And I have so much time. Like I love spending time with my friends. I love going out. I was at a party last night. Like yes, I'm so accomplished and I do a lot of work, but there's so much time if you
Yeah, it's
make
still
time.
social.
If you make, I love art. This my sister drew, and I just randomly took it from her
Wow.
because I like it. Like I love art, so like just because someone does so much work, you have time outside to do fun things. So yeah,
And then last
always
question, I'm so
prioritize that.
sorry.
Always prioritize yourself. Like if I'm stressed, I'll be
Over
like,
work.
I'll tell like my supervisor's calling. I'll be like, don't bother me. I'm stressed, so I'm not going to talk to you, right? Or whatever. I'm not stressed now, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
as an example, like prioritize yourself always.
And then last question, would you ever have online interns based from like the US or something like that?
Like at AstraZeneca, for example. Like what do you
Yeah,
mean?
wait.
Or like for
Like
research.
like for research, online internships from out of Canada?
I have no idea about that. Would I personally? Yeah, I would. It depends on the work, right? Like if I do some like biomarker stuff or whatever, like you don't need to be in person. My AstraZeneca work, a lot of it is online. So yeah, I don't know if AstraZeneca does that.
Yeah.
But I would. Why not?
Sorry, just asking for reference, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But thank you so much. Sorry if
Sounds
I
good.
asked a lot of questions.
No worries.
Okay, next question I think is from Jonathan.
So I had a few questions because you brought up like the usage of LLMs, and I actually do that a lot on my free time. But so how much do you think it's like really significant how much it shortened or accelerated like the progress of your research?
Yeah, it's really the thing about like AI modeling is that you need a lot of patience though, right? Like so you have to have like
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of patients. So like yes, it can like help a lot with like diagnosis and prognosis, but for it to be good, it like takes a long time, it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of like patient information, a lot of like patient recruitment, things like that, which is what I think the
Yeah.
hurdle is. Because it
Yeah.
takes like bias is such a huge thing.
Mhm.
So like you need such a broad spectrum. That's I think the hurdle
Yeah.
right now of like why things are not being implemented is because the data sets aren't big enough, the data sets aren't good, they're
Yeah.
whatever. So that's the issue. That's the issue I had for my PhD too, was like, oh, your sample size is too small and I have like 800
Yeah.
people, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So do you think like becoming proficient in using like these AI tools is going to be really important for both research and like actual healthcare practitioners?
100%. I just had a so um I had a meeting today. Literally before this, I had a meeting with my manager, two of my managers from AstraZeneca to teach them how to use Notebook LM and like
Oh,
another AI chatbot. Yeah, literally.
yeah.
It's so funny because right before this meeting, it was that. And I had to show them, be like, this is how you do it. And this is what you do. And like, this is how it
Mm.
can be used within AstraZeneca. Because someone on Friday, someone gave me a work to do and she's like, okay, let's have a meeting in 2 hours about this, right? So I was like, oh, she's probably gonna like I did it within 5 minutes using Notebook LM. Like literally I did it so fast and I finished it. And then 2 hours later we had a meeting and she's like, oh, I was just gonna explain to you what to do and you already finished it. And I was like, yeah. She's like, I thought it would take you all day. It took me like 2 minutes on Notebook LM because they don't know. And it's happening now. Like I work in AstraZeneca right now and these people don't know how to use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like it's so crazy. And AstraZeneca now is pushing using AI. Like we have to do AI, everybody has to do AI training, and every person has to create a case study where you use AI and you have to present that to the department. So they're
Yeah.
really, really pushing how to use AI. So if you guys, and I don't like, I'm not some like big LLM AI ChatGPT like pro, right? Like I use it for
Hmm.
like I do machine learning for my research, which is different, but like I'm not a pro and I'm coming into this internship and they're acting like I'm some like AI god who knows how to do everything. And it's just because I know how to use
Wow.
Notebook LM and like ChatGPT, right? So like if you're actually good, if you know how to create agents, if you know how to create like stuff, you're already like above the current people working in these industries. So
Yeah,
yeah.
because I've been like doing a lot of things where it's like, oh, if there's like a tool I want to make, I like try to integrate LLMs into it now because
Yeah.
I think like just learning how to do that is really important.
100%.
Yeah.
I use like literally I use AI for every single thing that when I came to AZ and they were like pushing for it and I was like, do you guys not use this stuff? And they're like, no, how do you do it? We don't even know how to. And I'm like, oh my God. And
Okay.
now I become an AI champion at chat in AstraZeneca. Like literally that's one of my titles is AI champion because people come to me to ask help with AI just because I like have used it before and no one else has. And I'm older than you guys, right? So like you guys are growing up with this stuff. So like you guys are probably way better than me.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, we'll take a question from Heyun.
Oh yeah, thank you for answering our questions like up to this time. I just wanted to ask like how you manage to work in groups. So because I personally have worked normally in like as an individual, so I don't really know how to work in groups like when you're doing experiments or like investigating something. So I guess I just wanted to ask like how you manage to work with a team so well.
Yeah, teamwork is like a super, super important thing, I think. It's like a really good skill to have. And it's hard to gain in undergrad and even in high school, right? Like you don't do many things that you're going to work in groups with. Um, but that's why I think like doing extracurricular stuff and like leadership stuff is really good because I think that helped me a lot, right? So like in my master's and in my PhD, I was like PhD representative, and then I did like co-president of the department and stuff like that. And that's where I was forced to work with other people, right? So like put yourself in situations where you're like actually forced to work with other people. And then as you go
Yeah.
along, you kind of learn, right? I'll give you an actual example. So in my first year of presidency, me and my like not the co-president, me and the vice president of the department, we had like a huge fight. Like we were like
Oh,
texting each other being like, you bad word, you this, that. Like I
yeah,
was so angry. Like we were so angry at each other. And like, and then like, you kind of learn, you're like, okay, why am I like getting so angry? Like nothing's that serious. Like,
Mhm.
how can I fix this? Like, I'm the president. I need to like make sure that I'm not like whatever. So you like force yourself into these situations and you're like, okay, let me like because you're in the pressure, right? Like if I'm the president, I'm in the point where I like, okay, I'm angry, but I need to figure out how to deal with this. And I put myself in that situation and I have to deal with it and I learn, right? So the best way to like do it, especially teamwork, is like do teamwork. Like put yourself in a situation where you have to, because there's no other way, right? Like there's no other way to learn.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of like learn how to like compromise, learn how to like have conversations with people. Like something I've learned a lot is like rather than just like assuming things, you have to talk. Like you have to don't be shy to like talk to someone, right? Like your team, be like, hey, this is what I expect. What do you expect? How can we work towards what our goal is, right? That conversation is easy to do rather than do something and then they don't like it and you don't like what they like and then it just causes a huge problem. Like if you talk from the start,
Yeah.
it'll work out. So I think communication is a huge one, but to get the actual experience, like you just got to do stuff, right? Like join leadership committees, join clubs, join things, plan events, that kind of stuff.
Right, just throw yourself in there. But like
Yeah.
when you do experiments, for example, like how do you like assign rules? Like this person does that and like that person does that because like I'm not really experienced in working with a group.
It for like sometimes it depends on your project too, right? Like I for most of my degree I was by myself, like in my
Yeah,
research. So,
oh,
like I
yeah.
didn't have anybody to work with. So you're like, because it's usually like for grad degrees, it's usually like an independent research project. So you kind of are doing things on your own. But like for me, like if I needed to, now I'm working with a bunch of people, but like I know, so like I know what my strength is, right? So like I know what I can get done on myself and in the time that I need. So I'm gonna prioritize things that I'm good at and do those, right? Then if I say, okay, like I might not be as good as this, or I don't have time for this, or this is less important, that's when I'm gonna be like, okay, I can prioritize that to an undergrad, and I can prioritize this easier thing to a high school student, right? So I think that's a important skill to have is like prioritizing tasks. What are you good at? What are other people good at? That's where conversation happens too, right? Like, what are you good at? What am I good at? What can we delegate? Can I delegate to you? What should I keep for myself? That's especially important in research, right? Like, I'm not going to give a high school student stats analysis to do because obviously they're not going to be able to do that, right?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the insight.
Awesome. Okay, we'll go to Rumeza.
I'm Ramaisa, and I wanted to ask about how you said you found one problem from your patient that you were dealing with, and then you saw how it was repeated across many hospitals and many different places. So, suppose as a high school student, we saw a problem like that, would we be able to sort of do that experiment as well, where we look at if that same problem is reciprocated in other hospitals? And like, how did you get the opportunity to check? Because I know a lot of patient records are confidential.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't be able to, especially like if you're trying to do something medical as like a high school student. I would not be able to have done it if I wasn't part of my research team, right? And also just for context, like I didn't just come up with this project, right? Like I sat with my PI and we talked about it. So you have to like just say if you're interested, just say I was interested in aspirin resistance just from my own knowledge, right? Like I would never expect you to come up with like a research project yourself, right? Like that'd be super impressive to me, right? So like if you have like you might have a question that you're interested in, a good place to start would be like, okay, who is doing this research, right? So if you're interested in just say aspirin resistance, I would have looked up like aspirin resistance research and done a research like analysis, see who does what, and then I would reach out to that supervisor who's a PhD or an MD or an MD PhD in that field, right? Who's doing that research already. Because in order to do research, you have to get research ethics board application. You have to do like research ethics approval, right? I can't go, nobody, not even my supervisor, can go into random patients' charts and start doing research on them, right? He's seeing these trends because through his patients, right? And it's trends that he's seeing. He's not going through patients' charts and being like, what can I find, right? Because that's not allowed. You can't do that. So like you have a question, you find a supervisor who's doing similar research, then you reach out to them and say, I have this question, I'm really interested in pursuing this, right? Then they can talk to you and say, hey, yeah, we maybe have a project like this already, or we can start this project. And then your first step would be, let's write a proposal and send it to research ethics and get approval, right? All of that stuff takes money and you won't, like, it would be unaffordable for you to do. Like, it'd be like hundreds of thousands of dollars to get all this stuff done. So like you need to find somebody who has the funding from the Canadian government, for example, or their like research funding and stuff to help you work through it. But that's kind of what a master's project is, right? Like if you find like you're interested in something, you're going to find somebody who does similar research, and then you're going to sit with them and think about a project. You're going to apply for funding, you're going to apply for like ethics, and then you're going to carry that forward, right? So it's a huge process. And as a high school student, I think it's like way far ahead for you. Yeah.
That's true. Would
Yeah.
there be
But
any online databases that would have a similar data set
you
from
can,
patients?
you can probably not. Like there might be like published data sets that you can find through like publications. But you might not necessarily like you can't do research on them because you don't have you don't have the patient. So for example, like this patient population, right? Like I have approval from them to publish this result. So you can't take that result and find something else because the patient hasn't given you approval for it. So even if you find databases that are like potentially from a researcher, you can't necessarily use them for your own research. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, your next question is from Lourdes, and then I think we just have a few more and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, thank you for sharing everything. I was wondering, I know you said that you had a high schooler in one of your labs, and so I was wondering how she was able to contribute to your guys' research and help out.
Yeah. So part of my lab, we have a huge biobank. So it's like a just a big freezer full of like blood samples, and each blood sample has like a ID on it. So like one, two, three, four, and that tells me what patient it is. And I'm part of the like I'm very involved. I was very involved with my department, and one of the professors, she knew one of the professors through like a a not-for-profit that she volunteered for and he worked with. And then she was invited to like an outing that we had, and I met her there. Um, and like we all just went for dinner or whatever, and then she started following me on Instagram. And then I post a lot on my Instagram of like when I need research help. So like I post on my Instagram being like, does anybody want to help me like do this? And she just was like, oh, can I help you? And I just needed her to do like writing down, like she takes out the samples and writes down the numbers. Like that's all her job is. So like something really simple like that, because that's easy to do. You don't need like it's not hard. So that's the job she's currently doing. Is like going through the freezer and documenting every single number. But that's how she got it. Was like she was networking with Pascal Tyrell, who is like a professor. We went on a like a EDI initiative. I met her there. She just talked to me and like randomly followed me on Instagram, and then I posted something on Instagram, and she just happened to see it and responded. So it's like networking, right? Like finding people and networking with people. But I have never had any other high schooler, but I've had undergrads who like message me on LinkedIn being like, "Hey, can I do this?" And I only respond like genuinely, I'll only respond to people when I need someone. So like if someone messages me exactly at the time that I need them, that person is who's gonna get hired. So that's why I just like constantly email people, send them follow-ups a month later. Like you just have to always be emailing because you never know when you'll hit someone when they need somebody, right? Because like I'm not gonna be like, oh, I might need someone in September, so like I'll think about you, but then when September comes, I'm gonna forget about you. So like whoever I know is like messaging me at that time is the person who's gonna get it.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, I think we only have 4 questions left. So Beatrice, you can go now.
Um, I think I'd like to study neurology and work with neurodivergent children. And I recently read an article about a high school student who developed an AI model to help diagnose ADHD or autism using retinal images. And I found that really interesting. And it made me wonder whether similar approaches could be explored for other neurodevelopmental conditions like sensory processing disorders or high cognitive ability. And I was quite impressed that a high schooler conducted such complex research. And I'd love to start exploring something like this myself, but I honestly don't know where to begin, especially because my middle school doesn't really have anything related to research. And I think that as someone who actually uses machine learning in research, how would you advise a student like me to start something in this area and find mentors to guide me?
Are you in middle school?
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh my gosh. Congratulations to you. You're so smart already. Um, I think in middle school I was like sitting playing like RuneScape or something on my computer. Um, anyways, good for you. Uh, a good question. We have in IMS, like the department that me and Davina are in, we actually have a 13-year-old PhD student. So there's no limit to what you can do, and age is not a limit. I always say that age is not a limit. But a lot of it, like it always comes down to who you know, right? And like who you can network with and who you can find who'll take you. I think it would be hard to find somebody who would take on a middle schooler, but that's not like the 13-year-old PhD student is like an example that you can do it. So my advice to you would be like network, network, like email people. Like if I got an email from a 13-year-old or like a grade like 7 or 8 student being like, I'm interested in your research, I would be like, you're so cool. Like come and help me in my research. But you just have to find someone who's like able to. It's really difficult when you're not 18. Like because like pre-18, you're not an adult. So like everything becomes difficult, right? Like everything needs to go through your parents, like all of you, like if you're under 18, you can't speak to patients, you can't speak to physicians, you can't like there's so many guidelines of what you can't do because you're a child. So that's what makes it really hard. But what I would do is just like keep reading, keep your interest going, ask people questions, like network with researchers, like create a LinkedIn and be like, I'm a 13-year-old, or I keep saying 13, I don't know if you're 13, but like however you are, like I'm a young researcher, aspiring researcher, and interested in just networking with people, right? And I feel like that would get you somewhere, right? Like if you create a LinkedIn and like talk about your interests and what you've done, reach out to people, like see if you can shadow a researcher or like just come into a lab and do a lab tour or something. That might be a good first step for you. And then you don't know where you'll go from there, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I am 13.
13. I don't know why I randomly said 13, but nice.
Okay, our next question is from Grace.
Hi, Dr. Khan. I was wondering from your like research results, for the aspirin resistance, like, is there any particular reason like why they were resistant to like the aspirin and like was there like a workaround?
Yeah, good question. That was another part of the lecture that I removed. But there's different reasons, right? So um there's something called pharmacokinetic resistance and pharmacodynamic resistance. So pharmacokinetic resistance means that like the drug is just not able to like move throughout your body properly, right? So like it could be that when you take an aspirin, you don't absorb it, the person doesn't absorb it in their gut, so they're just like excreting it, or maybe they are absorbing it, but it gets broken down very quickly, so it doesn't reach the platelets. Maybe they have too many platelets, so there's not enough aspirin. So in those cases, you can increase the dosage, right? So you can give a patient a higher dose so that it's like it can absorb better, or it can reach the platelets, whatever. That's pharmacokinetic resistance. But then there's something called pharmacodynamic resistance, which is where the the actual like platelet epigenetics is different, right? So like the thing that aspirin actually inhibits and binds to, the COX-1 enzyme, is like structurally different, or um, it's like there's like something different between it, or like there's epigenetic in the like the mRNA or something that creates that is different. So aspirin just literally will not, no matter how much aspirin you give to this patient, their platelet is just different. That aspirin doesn't work for it, right? So in those patients, we can't increase the dosage because if you give them as much aspirin as you give, it's not going to do anything. So in those patients, you have to give them an alternative drug, right? So another paper that I published was like a different drug. If patient is resistant to aspirin and we give them that drug, do their platelets become inhibited? And it did, right? So that was a project that I did in my master's too. So like for those patients, you would be like, okay, instead of aspirin, we'll give you something different. So those are the kind of two main reasons that we hypothesize that it happens.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Drasana and then we'll end with Zakaya. So Drasana, you can ask your question now.
Hi. First of all, the presentation was really good. So I just have a few questions, actually. When you were doing the research paper, when you started it, were you like sometimes feeling overwhelmed with all the data collection or when you were writing? And sometimes did you like regret your choices of joining it?
Yeah, a good question. I think Davina can probably relate to this too. Like through grad school, sometimes you're like, what am I doing? I hate this. Like I want to go to bed. I'm tired. It happens, right? Like because like degrees, like masters and PhDs can be so long, right? That like you have to put so much energy into it that like it can be tiring for sure. But that's why I always say like do things outside of your schooling and degrees. Like I was involved, I like painted longboards, I hang out with friends so that like if I'm writing writing papers when I first started was so tiring to me that I'd be like, oh, I can't do this. So what I would do is like do as much as I could, and when I'm tired, I'm gonna like, I'm gonna go outside and like play basketball. I'm gonna go for a like a ride on my longboard. Then I come back and I feel like kind of refreshed and I can get back to it, right? So it happens. It happens in undergrad, it happens in high school, it happens in PhD, it happens in masters, it happens with everybody, right? Because you're kind of being forced to do things, and our bodies, we're human, we get tired. So yeah, definitely happens, but I think that's why it's important to do things like outside of your work so that you have like something to like distract yourself if you get to that point. And then also, I also that's what I was saying about undergrad too, is like I would create a network of like support with your peers, right? I've had students who come up to me and are like, this is happening to me, like, woe is me, this is blah blah. And I'm like, oh, that happened to me, that happened to Davina, that happened to this person too. Like, you're not alone, don't worry, we all go through it. And then they're like, oh, okay, like that makes me feel better, right? Like you're not alone. So like talking with people, making friends who are in the same like boat as you can help too.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I agree with everything that was said. I'm doing my master's defense in September, but I told my committee that I'm taking like a week off at the end of July because I just need it and they'll just have to work with it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think our last question is from Zakaya and then we'll wrap up.
Hello. Thank you for presenting and sharing the knowledge that you've gotten and obtained over the years. I had two questions for you. My first question is, what are your thoughts specifically on taking a non-traditional track before going to med school? Because I know that's like technically what you did, and I know you talked about how you would not go to med school if you did not have your PhD. I want to go and get my bachelor's in nursing on a pre-med track. Then I'm trying to decide whether I want to take a small break and become like a midwife and get my master's of science in nursing, or if I should just go straight to med school. So I want to see what your advice on that would be.
Yeah, do what you want to do. Do what interests you. Like, I would support you if you're like interested in nursing and you like want to explore masters in nursing. Like, 100% do that. Because like I said that before too. Like, I would not change if someone told me I'll get you into med school right out of undergrad. I'd be like, no, thank you, because like I found something at that point. If you told me in undergrad, like I'll get you right into med school, I'd be like, yes, 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 yes. I don't want to do a PhD. I don't want to do a master's. I want to go straight to med. But now, if I was to go back, I'd be like, absolutely not. I want to do my PhD. I want to do my master's. I want to take off. I want to work in ICU. I want to work at AstraZeneca. Then I'll go to med school, right? Because I learned so much about myself. I've gained so much experience. I know when I return to med school, I'm going to be a much better physician because I know what I'm
Yeah.
coming into. I have so much experience. I have life experience. I have science experience. I have like med experience. Um, and like maybe if you just say you like you do you go to nursing, um, what if you like absolutely love it and you're like, this is what I want to do. I
Mhm.
don't care about medicine, right? And or you could say, I absolutely hate this. I want to go to medicine. And you can do that because a master's, I mean, a nursing is a very good degree to have for med school too,
Yeah.
right? So like I 100% support non-traditional journeys. Take your time. I took like for me, for example, I did my undergrad, I took a year off. I did my master's, I took 2 years off. I did my PhD, and now I'm going to med school, right?
Yeah.
And that time I did an internship. I worked at AstraZeneca. I worked at like in the ICU. I did so many things. I traveled a lot. So like take a lot of time for yourself. You guys are young. You don't need to rush into your degree. Um, I saw a quote somewhere that said like I forgot what it was, but it was so good. It was something like you can rush into like your career if you want to, but I'm going to take my time so I can learn about myself and like become a better human, right? And we're both
Yeah.
going to end up in med school. I'm going to end up in med school, and this 22, 23-year-old person who's joining me from undergrad is going to get in med school. We're both going to be in the same career, but I'm going to have such a fulfilled history, and they're not. Because like
Yeah.
generally med school, like it can destroy people because you like have to put
Mhm.
your whole energy into this. It's such a big commitment that if you're coming with like having experienced life already and like enjoyed a little bit of life, then it's better than like it's like grind because undergrad is hard, right? Like undergrad is not
Mhm.
easy. It's like grinding for undergrad and then having to go straight into med school. I would rather die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and
So that's just my opinion, but yeah.
thank you. And my second question is, what are some other units or areas of study, like the cardiovascular, how you talked about, you have the cardiac unit, which is much more funded than the vascular unit. Uh, what are other units or areas of studies that are like that, if you don't mind me asking?
Like undervalued or overvalued? Overvalued. Or like
Undervalued.
undervalued? That's a good oh my God, that's a good question. I haven't been in like I've been in oncology. Oncology has so an absurd amount of money, which is good. Like I support that. It's
Mm-hmm.
good. They need a lot of money. Oncology, so if you're looking for like high funding things, oncology is good, cardiac is good, neurology is pretty like big.
Mm-hmm.
Underfunded, I don't know. That's a good question. I have no clue. I know vascular for sure because I'm in vascular, so I can like understand.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Do you know, Davina? Is your field underfunded?
I don't think so. I do mostly like neurodegenerative disease research and like ger which focuses mostly in geriatric populations, and my lab is very well funded. So unfortunately, I don't think I'm the best person to speak to that, but I know that
Yeah.
it is a very real issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually like chronic diseases that are like
Mhm.
slow progressing
Yeah.
that like and are less catastrophic, I guess. But like neurodegenerative disease is also one, but like I feel like that's quite funded. But like brain is like funded properly usually all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But that was a good question, and I'm not sure.
Thank you. Thank you for answering all my questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much to Dr. Khan for taking so much extra time to answer questions today. I think there was like about an hour and a half of extra questions. We very much appreciate it. You can just let me know afterwards how is best for students to like get in contact with you if they have any
Sure.
questions we weren't able to answer today. But we'll
Yeah,
let you go now, and thank you so much again for speaking and teaching. I think everyone really
yeah,
loved it.
no problem. Thank you. If anybody reaches out to me, call me Hamza, please. Don't call me Dr. Khan. But yes, no problem. It was my pleasure, and please feel free to reach out. I'll give you Davina, I'll give you my email and the slides, and you
Yes, that
can
would be
send them
great.
out. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you
no
back here
problem.
on Wednesday.
Thanks, everybody, and good luck with everything.